Okay, with that, then I'm going to call this meeting to order. Hi, Jenny, there you are. Call this meeting to order, and we will begin by having the Pledge of Allegiance, and Dr. Andy Forlis is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And following the Pledge of Allegiance, we're going to hear the national anthem sung by the Mesa High School Choir. I'm looking forward to that. We had them scheduled last month, and we had some technical difficulties. So hopefully all of that will be ironed out and we'll be able to hear from them. And then we will talk about the governing board procedures. So let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Forlis.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's first gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the noise that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. That was worth waiting for 3 weeks to hear. Thank you, Mesa High School Choir. Well, I want to welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Mesa Public Schools Governing Board. On March 30th, 2020, Governor Doug Ducey announced that Arizona schools would be closed for the rest of the year due to the COVID-19 health crisis. In early April, when his stay-at-home order was issued, governmental functions, including school board governing board meetings, were exempted from the order. So while it is legal to have an in-person school district governing board meeting, our district is choosing to exercise safe social distancing for our meetings by using a virtual meeting platform. The following will be the rules we are using for our meetings. Number one, although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference or telephone call. Tonight, everyone is here by video conference. We are meeting by use of WebEx conferencing platform and live streaming through YouTube, which allows for members of the public to view and or listen to this meeting. You can access the live stream, and you will see this on your screen at mpsaz.org/live. If you need accommodations, please contact Martha Head, Assistant to the Superintendent and Governing Board at 480-472-0201. At this time, the board is taking public comment through an online form. You can access it at bit.ly/MPS comment, and that too is being shown on your screen. Submitted comments will be read aloud at the appropriate time during the meeting. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. A recording from this meeting will be available to the public via our district's Board Docs online software within 3 business days of the meeting. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. Thank you. Now we will look at item number or letter E, and that's the review of the agenda items. And I don't believe that there's anything that we need to adjust at this point. So we will move on to the review of the governing board calendar and turn it over to Dr. Forless. Andy, you're on mute. There you go.
And, all right. I'm looking forward to reviewing the calendar with you. For some crazy reason, I was just bumped out of Board Docs. So let me get right back into where I need to be. And off we go. Here we are. Technology is amazing when it works, right? So here we are this evening. We have had our special hearing of our budget, and then we are continuing on with our general meeting this evening. Tomorrow, bringing your attention to our general administrator meeting. That will be starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow. That is our opportunity to bring in all of our administrators and supervisors and to kick off the new year. Mrs. Miner, I know that you will be welcoming and sharing some remarks with the team at that time as well. You will see on the calendar we have added the startup calendar, those professional development opportunities that are available for our staff, and you will see those highlighted throughout the month of June. We also have included when our staff are reporting back to work so that you can see those as well. You see that we've got secretary meetings scheduled as well as legal meetings, and then our elementary office staff. This is a light calendar. Typically, we have a lot more events happening that would be in person, but again, these are all being done virtually. We're welcoming back our registrars. We will have a management meeting with our administrators on the 22nd of July. So while we have a kickoff tomorrow of our general administrator meeting, that kind of sets the vision and the focus for our district for the year. We then go into that management meeting a week later where we get into the details and the nuts and the bolts of what they can expect, any procedures or practices that have changed that they need to be aware of. You can imagine with opening schools in a new environment that this is going to be a jam-packed day. We've got board planning with President Miner and Clerk Hutchinson at 3 o'clock that afternoon. We will be welcoming our teachers to Mesa and those and counselors on the 24th. We'll be continuing on taking a look at supporting those our new teachers and counselors into our system the following Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to backtrack just a minute to Monday, which is the 27th, and that is a study session with the governing board, and we will be bringing in Julie Bagan, a consultant from Arizona School Board Association. And this is the opportunity where the governing board and I will be able to discuss communication protocols, and then we will also be taking a look at an evaluation instrument for me as the superintendent and have a discussion about what that will look like. The following evening, the 28th, we have a governing board meeting. And to round out the end of July, which is hard to believe it's the end of July, we will have department meetings. And then we wish board member Peterson a very nice vacation. Looks like he's going to spend some time away. Hope it is in much cooler weathers than in Phoenix as we are right now. So any questions about the calendar?
Dr. Forless, I missed when you said the meeting that we're having for administrators, you and I mean, I'll be there to that beginning of that meeting, and I had it on the date I think was incorrect. What was that date again?
It is tomorrow morning, starting at 9 o'clock.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a busy couple of days.
Starts at 9 o'clock, huh? Okay. We will talk after this meeting.
That sounds great. And Mrs. Williams, I think that you have placed Mrs. Miner at the beginning of that agenda, but Mrs. Miner, if you would like a couple more hours in the morning, we can certainly have you close up the meeting if you would like.
That's really kind. I will be there at 9 o'clock.
Okay, and it's virtual, so you can be right back in your home office to join us.
Okay, that's just great. I look forward to it. I had it for Friday, and I knew that couldn't be right. I knew I had that wrong, but I didn't realize it'd be tomorrow. So I'm glad I asked you that question tonight. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
Dr. Forless?
Yes.
Is the registration for the law conference open at this time?
I'm going to lean on Martha. Martha, I know that you are watching the registration of the law conference. It has changed from in-person to virtual. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Correct, Dr. Forless. It is the registration opened on July 7th. So any board members who would like to participate, I'm happy to register you. And I do have several of you that have requested to be joined with that meeting. So I have President Miner, Board Member Richardson, and Clerk Sears, or Clerk Hutchinson, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it is completely virtual.
That's the calendar till the end of the month.
Thank you, Dr. Forless. Okay, then I think we can move on to the consent agenda. Item number 4. All items listed will be considered as a group and will be approved with one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Richardson. Do I have a second?
Hutchinson, second.
Thank you. Now for the vote, Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
Mrs. Sears? Oh, before we vote, please hold 1 minute. I forgot to ask if there was any discussion. Then we will move on for the vote. And Mr. Peterson already voted. I will accept that. And we will go on to Mrs. Sears.
Aye.
Mrs. Richardson?
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Aye.
And Mrs. Miner, aye. So that is a unanimous in acceptance or approval of the consent agenda as it stands. Okay, then we will move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is the minutes of the study session. Let me go to my cheat sheet right here so I can read that to you. All right, recommendation approval of the minutes of a study session meeting held on June 23rd, 2020.
President Miner, I move that we approve the minutes of the study session held on June 23rd, 2020.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, and then for the vote, Mrs. Sears?
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Aye.
Mrs. Richardson?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
And Mrs. Miner, aye. Okay, that is item number, or letter B now, the minutes of a regular meeting and held on 23/2020. Approval of the minutes of a regular meeting held on June 23rd, 2020. Motion?
So moved.
Miner? Okay.
All right, that was Mr. Peterson, and the second, please.
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchinson. Now for the vote, Mrs. Sears,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Aye.
Mrs. Richardson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
and Mrs. Minor, aye. Thank you. That is approval of the minutes of June 23rd. We are now on the minutes of a study session meeting held on July 1st, 2020. Do I have a motion for that?
President Minor, I move that we approve the minutes of the study session held July 1st, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchinson. Do I have a second?
Yana Sears, seconds.
Thank you. And now for the vote, Mr. Peterson,
Aye.
Mrs. Richardson. I know there you go. We kind of lost you for a minute, Jenny. Are you back? I'm going to go ahead and ask, Jenny, are you there? Okay, I need a vote from you.
I can't unmute.
Oh, there you go. We heard you. We heard you.
Oh, good. Aye.
I lost my place. I think I did Mr. Peterson. I think I have yet to do Mrs. Sears. Mrs. Sears, did you already vote?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I think Mrs. Hutchinson, you voted?
Aye.
And Mrs. Minor, aye. I apologize, I lost my place. Okay. With that, we will move on to the certificated and classified personnel requests, and that is with Dr. Driscoll.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. We are asking for your approval this evening of the certificated and classified personnel request.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Driscoll. Do I hear a motion for the classified and personnel requests?
I move that we approve the classified and the certificated and classified personnel requests.
Thank you, Mrs. Richardson. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Discussion at this time before the vote? Any discussion? Okay, then I will take the vote and I will begin with Mrs. Richardson.
Aye.
Mrs. Sears?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Aye.
And Mrs. Minor? Aye. Thank you. And with that, Dr. Driscoll or Dr. Forlis, did you have any comments or special news you wanted to share with us as we have approved that?
I certainly would, President Minor, Madam President, members of the board. With your approval of the personnel request this evening, you approved the appointment of 2 new administrators in Mesa Public Schools. I'm so proud to announce that Tasia Lane is the principal of Lehigh Elementary. Tasia is currently the Dean of Students for Adams and Kerr Elementary Schools. She earned her bachelor's degree from Arizona State University, her first master's degree from Arizona State University, and her second master's degree from Prescott College. Congratulations to Tasia on her appointment as the next principal of Lehigh Elementary. Yay. I wish that we could celebrate in person with you, Tasia. I know that your family is watching from afar, so lots of celebration to you. And secondly, I would like to introduce Kelly Moreno. Kelly is our interim principal at Irving Elementary. Kelly most recently served as the assistant principal for Summit Academy. She earned her bachelor's degree from Arizona State University and 2 master's degrees from Northern Arizona University in bilingual multicultural education and educational leadership, respectively. Kelly has been committed to the public education of children here in Mesa Public Schools since 1999, and we are very pleased to introduce her as the interim principal for Irving Elementary. Congratulations to you, Kelly, and to your family and your loved ones who are watching, and we can celebrate with you. And that concludes my celebrations of our new administrators.
Thank you, and we would love to welcome them personally at some point in time. We plan to do that, but congratulations to both of you. We look forward to seeing you out there on your campuses as soon as possible. Okay, with that, we will move on to item E, and that is the 2020-21 superintendent's goals. And these goals are something we have been working on as a board, and Dr. Forless, including you, in a study session. We devoted quite a bit of time talking about it there and coming up with what we felt were the priorities of the board as well as the district that you would be focusing on this year. And then we talked about it again in our last board meeting. So tonight we are ready to have a motion, but first of all, I wanted to ask Dr. Forless if there was anything you'd like to say before we move into the vote process, and then we can go on in that direction.
This is hilarious. I'm unmute. I think I've got tech support and myself. We're both muting and unmuting at the same time. So I think I got the dance right and I'm unmuted. I would like to thank the board for the great conversation that we had at the study session. Your feedback was very important. I incorporated that into what I presented to you on June 23rd. So thank you again for your feedback and for the rich conversation. And I would just like those that are viewing with us this evening, would just like to reiterate my appreciation and my honor to be able to serve Mesa Public Schools. And this year, the goals that I have proposed for action this evening are to develop a strong relationship and two-way communication with our community, and then secondly, the successful opening of the 2020-21 school year. That's a big job, and we're going to talk about that tonight at length. And then the implementation of our strategic plan that we have spent a lot of time engaging our community. So those are the three goals that I would love to put my time, energy, and effort behind, and to rally our leadership team around.
Thank you, Dr. Forless. So with that, we're going to have a motion and a second, and then we'll have an opportunity if any of the board members would like to discuss anything further on the goals. So may I have a motion to accept the 2021 superintendent's goals?
President Minor, I'd like to recommend the approval of the 2021 superintendent's goals.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchinson. Do I have a second?
Teddy Richardson, second.
Thank you. Now, any discussion regarding the goals? Any comments? I guess the only thing I would say is that likewise, Dr. Forless, I thought we had a very good discussion among board members where we were able to really discuss the challenges we know that the district faces in the upcoming year and the things that we want to really focus on and zero in on. And as you said, one of the goals being the reopening of school in itself could have been the goals for 2021, because we know this has been a huge challenge as it is for all school districts across our nation right now. So we appreciate that you are willing to even go a step further and have two more big goals. And I have to say, for me, I think the communication goals is outstanding because I love the fact that we're going to be reaching out even more than we have before, which we already do, but we're going to make that a goal too, because with a new superintendent and a new normal, it's even more imperative at this time that we have good and strong communication, not just with the board, but with our community, with our employees. So I think that's another very wise and completely understandable goal for this year. And as for the third goal, the strategic plan, something we've been working on already for a couple of years, and you were very much involved in that process before, and we all have seen the great works that have been involved in that. And so we're looking forward to continuing the work in the strategic plan in that direction. So with that, unless there's any other comments, we will move forward on the vote. Any other comments? Okay then, I will start with Mrs. Hutchinson on the vote. Oh, yeah, on the vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Mrs. Sears. I saw her mouth move aye. I think she said aye.
Unmute.
There you are. And Mrs. Richardson.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mrs. Minor, aye. Okay, that is unanimous to approve the superintendent's goals for 2021. All right.
Unspeed, Dr. Forless.
Yes. Yes. Good comment. Good. Yes. Whoa. All right. So now we will move on to the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-21 budget, which we had a hearing on at approximately 5:30, 5:40 this evening. And with that, I will first turn it over to, or do I need to, with Mr. Thompson or Dr. Forless before we have a motion on that?
Madam President, I just want to take an opportunity to again thank our community for their strong investment in our children. This budget is possible because of voter supported our override and bond that has allowed us to deliver upon our Mesa Public School promise. So again, to our community, thank you. Your support is great. We are so grateful and we are so appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. The board, I know as a whole, seconds that and is so appreciative to all of our community who went out to vote and approved our bond and our override, because even with all these challenges that we were entering into and a lot of the unknowns, we feel all that much more secure and in a better position all around for having passed those. And we have our community to thank for that, and all those who were out there making the effort to communicate with our community and to educate them on what we do here in Mesa's public schools with our funds, that they could entrust us with those funds. And we will continue to be transparent and thorough as we give out all kinds of information on how we utilize that budget and what it is involved. And we have Mr. Thompson and Mr. O'Brien who help us with that at every meeting when we talk about the budget. And we appreciate all their efforts and their work to give us the kind of budget and the work behind it that we have seen this year. So thank you. Thank you to Dr. Lesser, who's not even here, who walked us through piece by piece every board meeting and in between, and worked every Friday with our staff and department chairs and administrators to make sure that those things that were important to our employees as well as our students, of course, foremost our students, would be considered for that budget. And a lot, if not all of those things that we talked about this last year that we were very specific to went directly into the classroom through individuals and programs, and it all has an impact on our students. So very proud of the work that has been done. And I'm very happy to make a motion on this budget coming up. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Madam President. You really stole my thunder there. And I want to thank you as a board. I mean, we really, for the public that's watching, it might seem kind of unimaginable that we're going to adopt a over $400 million budget with just a simple vote. But I assure everyone that there have been weeks and months and days spent on this in collaboration with staff, in collaboration with associations, in collaboration with the board. Sometimes it was face to face, and then for a long time it was this way. But we really had a great process this year for our budget. I feel very strongly that voices were heard, people were at the table, and as a result, we came out with something that was really, a good representation of a collaborative effort that supports our employees. I can't say enough about what we've been able to do for our classified employees, something we've all been talking about for several years, the minimum wage gap and the compression of our classified is finally getting rectified. Thank you again to our community for that. That is the override. our ability to meet that final challenge of 20 by 20 and get that 5% done for teachers in uncertain times and with uncertainty ahead of us. But really a great budget process. And I really feel strongly that all stakeholders were represented, and we didn't get everything. Nobody got everything they wanted. Let's always be honest about that, right? That's the budget process. But prioritizations were made, student needs were put forward, student support was put forward, and the bulk of this budget represents a real commitment to the classroom and to the support of the classroom and the support of our teachers in the classroom, which we hope someday soon to be back in. In the meantime, we will be supporting those teachers virtually, and we will have a different plan, but just as much need as ever that's represented in this budget to fund the current landscape. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. We've taken on that. We have contingencies available. We've talked through those issues to make sure that we're comfortable with the different challenges in front of us. Thank you to the governor for providing a grant program that really ensures that districts shouldn't drop more than about 2% of their ADM this year, because we're really uncertain as to how many kids are going to return or when they're going to return. We would love to have them all back on the 4th. We don't know if that's going to happen. But all of these things have led to this point, and I just want to thank you all for coming on this journey with us and being a part of it, because it's critical for us to communicate this with you and have the community understand our process. So thank you to everyone. But with that, I would say let's call for the vote. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. And yes, let's do that. Let's see if we can get a motion here. Do I hear a motion?
Kiana Sears make a motion to accept the budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Sears. The budget for the fiscal year 2020 through 2021. And do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And now for the vote. Mrs. Sears, I'll go right back to you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hutchinson?
Aye.
Mrs. Richardson?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
And Mrs. Minor, and that's an aye for me, and that does it for our budget. What a year. What a year putting that together. Hooray. That's a big hooray. Yay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, community. That is a wonderful thing we've just done. But anyway, so moving on, we are going to go to, oh my gosh, the big Open Schools 2021, what a lot of people are waiting to hear tonight and are probably tuning in for us. So with that, I will turn the time over to Dr. Forless.
Thank you, President Minor, members of the board. I want to let you know that we have 2,500 viewers this evening who are watching to learn and hear from us. And I see that that is 2,500 people that care a whole lot about the decisions that we have made and that we are going to share with our community this evening. We made a commitment that we would unveil our plan on July 14th. And so what we did this morning and throughout the day was to invite our employees and our community to join in and listen to this discussion around how we are going to be opening up schools. So thank you to those 2,500 viewers. Some of you might even be having a viewing party. So one person is logged on and you might have 6 people physically distanced around the room. So thank you very much for being a part of this conversation with us virtually. We're ready to go. So here we go. I want to begin by telling you how honored I am that we are able to engage in this discussion around our safe, strong, ready plan to open schools for the 2021 school year. I want to thank our community, our staff, our students for their input and sharing their thoughts through survey data, through focus groups, emails, and phone calls. We asked, you told us, we heard you, and we listened. Your feedback has been very helpful to the 170 members of our design teams who have collaborated to bring this plan to you this evening. So as board members, this evening, I ask that you provide your feedback, that you ask us more questions, that you give us your guidance based on the perspectives of those that you serve. I'm going to move on to the very next slide. I'd like to take a minute to remind us about our priorities and our commitments that we have made throughout the design process of this plan that we are going to share with you this evening. We know throughout the process that there are a number of items that need our attention. First and foremost, the safety and the wellness of our students, employees, and community. We know that we are committed to successfully transitioning to the new year by offering choices to our community, by instilling confidence in our families by providing safe learning environments, by instilling confidence in our employees by providing safe working environments. And then the core business of Mesa Public Schools is to provide personalized learning for every student to deliver on the Mesa Public School promise of knowing all of our students by name, serving them by strength and need to ensure that they are ready to graduate, ready for college, career, and community. We'll move on to the next slide. I'd like to walk you through the journey of our time of how we got to where we are today. And as we go through this journey, it's going to build up some of the impact of our decisions that we are going to share with you and those 2,500 viewers this evening. If we take a walk back, thanks spring break. At the end of our spring break, it was March 16th, and that's when Governor Ducey announced school closure due to the risk of COVID-19. That required us to redesign our business and our education model. We responded by providing remote instruction and services. I remember a board meeting where I shared with you that in 8 short days, we had closed school and delivered payroll and didn't miss a paycheck. So that is how nimble our staff was during this time, this very quick time of closure. From May 20th to the 29th, we sent out surveys to our staff and our families. And the intent of that survey was kind of that rear view look and then also a look through the windshield, what's ahead of us. So we asked our community and our families and our students, what were their thoughts about learning during school closure from March 16th to the end of the school year? And then from that, what were they looking forward to as we opened up schools? How were they feeling about where they would be most comfortable? We have a body of research about that. We also know that times have changed. So we're hanging on to that data, but we also know that times have changed. On May 26th, we came to you and talked to you about the design of our Opening Schools Task Force. That's made up of 11 design teams that have developed the work that we are going to share with you this evening. On June 9th, we did another update on our plan to open schools with 3 learning models. Our goal was to provide 3 learning models for our families to choose from: remote, modified in person, and in person. June 18th to the 24th, after we shared our best thinking with you, we then opened up invitations for virtual stakeholder meetings to gather feedback. We had over 6,000 attendees weigh in on a plethora of survey data. On June 23rd, the board approved a telework and also a distance learning policy. Those 2 policies have provided a foundation for us to continue on with our opening of schools plan. We know that that allows our staff to work from home to the best extent possible and for us to deliver instruction in a remote or distance environment. On to the next slide, I'm going to walk you through a couple more events. June 25th and 26th, we surveyed our families and teachers asking them to rate their preference because we know that our principals are very busy trying to get plans in place around what school is going to look like. Departments are very busy figuring out what is it going to look like, meals, transportation, and so on. So we sent out that survey. You're going to notice an interesting timeline here. So that was the 25th, 26th, we sent out a survey. Well, then on June 29th, the governor came out with an executive order that schools cannot begin in person until August 17th, and that we had the choice to choose remote up until August 17th. So that changed up our original plan to offer 3 learning models. We could not open our doors providing in-person instruction because of the executive order. On July 1st, we quickly scrambled and got together a study session to discuss the administration, Mesa Public School Administration's recommendation to begin school on August 4th with structured and enhanced remote learning until safe to return to in-person learning. We had a great conversation. You provided lots of questions to us. That has been instrumental in the plan that we are bringing you this evening. On July 9th, the governor had a press conference. And during that press conference, he reminded us that a return to in-person learning on August 17th is an aspirational date. So we need to, when he first announced on June 29th, when he announced that date of August 17th, he said that is aspirational. Reminded us again on July 9th. So here we are this evening. We have a series of data that we have collected over time. We have had multiple opportunities to have conversation with our governing board and to get feedback on our planning along the way. So we are bringing to you our revised plan to provide a phased approach from remote to in-person learning. And those are really important words that we are going to talk to and provide meaning to. But we are recommending a phased approach from remote to in-person learning. So I'm going to ask I'm going to prepare some comments prior to turning this over to Mrs. Williams, who is going to walk us through the framework of our plan. So the moment that everybody is waiting for is really, what does the details of this plan look like? So as we move into those details, I want to acknowledge that COVID-19 has disrupted our lives, forcing us to make complex decisions, oftentimes with sparse information and conflicting guidance. Our community has been patient and you have been resilient as we have endured starts and stops while navigating moving targets. As parents, as educators, community members, and leaders, we know that every decision that we make includes risks as well as rewards. We do not have every answer, and we're not going to get everything right the first time. But what we do is we will commit to learn together and getting better together. We know that our community is relying upon us to restore a continuity of learning while calming fears and reducing trauma caused by school closure and this global pandemic. I assure you that we want nothing more than to get back to our core business of learning. This will allow us to increase equitable access for students and to provide social, emotional, and academic experiences that bring our students and our staff together safely. The plan that we are about to share with you took a village to create, and it's going to take a village to implement it. We're all in this together to return safe, strong, and ready. I will turn it over to Mrs. Williams, our Associate Superintendent, who is going to walk us through the elements of our safe, strong, ready plan to provide a phased approach from remote to in-person learning beginning August 4th. Mrs. Williams, if you'd like to take it from there.
Thank you, Dr. Forlis. Governing Board, thank you for having us tonight. And we are so excited to share the information that we have been working tirelessly on since before school officially ended. We've been talking about what does the opening of school look like, and I appreciate Dr. Forlis laying out the timeline for us, because you can kind of see the ebbs and flows of the timeline and the planning that we've had to pivot and be flexible with. If you remember a couple of meetings ago, I shared at the study session that flexibility might be our new bump sticker. And we have had the opportunity to flex those muscles and be more flexible than we ever thought we could be, and pivot and change as circumstances have changed. And I just want to say that tonight you're going to hear a collaborative process. And you're going to hear a collaborative team share with you this plan. So you're not going to hear from me all evening. There'll be many voices sharing the work, because They represent the 170 plus members of our design teams and our teachers and our leaders and our staff across the district who've come together and used their best thinking to share the information that we have tonight. So we are excited to share that with you and to hear your feedback and answer any questions that we can. So what you're going to see tonight is our phased approach. We're going to show you what the fall semester we anticipate it looking like and how we will phase in from remote to modified in-person to in-person. We will show you in the remote setting and in the modified setting what student days that you might expect, samples of a schedule for students and teachers, what parents can expect. And you will hear a clear message about how this fall is different than spring remote learning. We learned a lot. And obviously, there's a huge difference in closing out a school year and opening a new school year. So we have lots to share around what's different and what's improved. You will see that there's a lot of student support and a lot of family support built into our plan. And we will also share with you our back to work and our safety procedures, how we will safely transition back into the workplace. We have amazing documents created by our design teams to talk about everything from sanitation to face coverings to sick leave. So we have a very comprehensive safety protocols in place that will be shared tonight with you and shared throughout the plan so that you can see the commitment that we're making, that Dr. Forless talked about, our considerations and our promises from the beginning around safety of our staff and students. Please excuse me. Okay, Cody, if you would move to the next slide. So as Dr. Fuller said, we've used a lot of data to make these decisions. We've used thousands of pieces of feedback from our parents, our staff, and our students. We've used, obviously, CDC guidance. They are, experts in the area of health safety. And we have used the Arizona Department of Education Road to Reopening guidance. Another source of feedback that we've used also is the Maricopa County Health Department. They are instrumental in all things health related to us in non-pandemic times. They are the ones who help us with whooping cough and all of those kind of situations we deal with in schools. And so they've been instrumental in helping us plan for this COVID-19 pandemic and what it should look like. It's to offer a safe environment for our staff and our students. They offer a weekly webinar that we attend, and we have a COVID response team that meets weekly to discuss how are we adjusting our reporting and making sure that we have the most current guidance when it comes to this pandemic. So the data that we have comes from many sources. And I don't want anybody to think that we took one source and said these others don't matter, because all of this information formed the best knowledge that we have today. As Dr. Forless shared, we gather everything and we make the best decision in the moment that we have it. And we know that we are going to have to be flexible and sometimes change when information changes, but we feel confident by listening to our constituency and listening to these health experts that we have a very well thought out, safe plan for students and staff. Cody, next. I wanted to share this from the ADE Road to Reopening guidance, and I thought that this was helpful as we talked through our options. And we've kept this in mind all along, but it's a nice reminder. In the state, they described this none to minimal spread, meaning where the virus is in the state. And if Arizona was in a place of none to minimal spread, then the scenario should be that all students are in physical buildings from the start of the school year. If there's a minimal to moderate, then they're suggesting some students using in the building and some using distance learning, which would be our modified in-person approach. If there is substantial spread, their suggestion was all students distance learning from the start of the school year with the option of returning when appropriate. So, and then of course, scenario 4 is that the one that we've talked about a couple of times. Should the pandemic ebb and flow through the years, we might have to have intermittent closures and switch to remote as needed, as defined by the way that the pandemic is acting. So Arizona, unfortunately, is one of a few states that is in the substantial spread category. And so you'll see that reflected tonight in our planning, knowing that the health concerns in Arizona are different. If you listen to the news, you hear different states having different challenges. Arizona, unfortunately, is a state that is facing a significant challenge right now. And hopefully some of the actions that the governor is taking will help to curb that. But currently, this is the reality. As I see, this is our best information today. And so we are in scenario 3, and you will see our recommendations around how we plan to start the school year. And so I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Forlis to talk us through what the fall semester will look like.
Cody, if you'd like to advance to the next slide, please. Here's a graphic that we shared with you July 1st about what this might look like. And so I'm going to talk you through what we see happening throughout the fall semester. You will see on the left-hand side of the screen the student learning model, and then on the bottom is the phased approach to in-person learning that I spoke about earlier. So as Mrs. Williams shared, we are currently in scenario number 3, which would require remote learning. So you will see that there is this green shaded area. Remote learning is how we will begin our school year on August 4th. When we have indicators that we are moving into scenario number 2 with reducing the spread and reducing infection rates, we will be able to move into modified in-person. That is what some other districts are calling a hybrid. About 50% of the students' time spent in a classroom, 50% spent online in a remote environment. That allows for physical distancing. That cuts the number of kids in a classroom in half. It also means that students would attend school, and we'll provide more details for you later in the presentation, but students would spend 2 days in school 1 week and then 3 days the next week, and there would be a rotation. And then we would move when we get to scenario number 1, when it's safe to return to full in-person learning. And now you're going to see 2 areas in yellow that I'd like to talk a little bit about. That limited modified in-person and then modified in-person. We believe, based on guidance from our state officials, from our public health officials, that we may be able to bring in smaller groups of children as it makes sense. And this might be a stair-stepped version of modified in-person, so starting in smaller groups and then expanding. What you will notice is there is green in every single one of those 4 categories, because at every decision point, families can choose to remain in a remote environment. So throughout the fall semester, we predict into the spring semester, remote learning is the constant. That is what we will always be able to provide. It would be then families would be choosing, do they want to move out of remote into that limited modified in-person, and then to full in-person. So there's always that choice of remote. I know many of you, we are now up to over 3,000 viewers. I know that many of you are thinking, well, came out at the very beginning, say, here's 3 options. We would like you to choose from these 3 options. Because of the data, because of the governor's executive order, in-person is not one of those choices that we're able to provide at this time. So the choices are limited to, right now it's remote, and then working through this continuum as we pay attention to the health officials and the guidance and the directives that they're giving us about when we can move into these other areas. So Cody, if you'd like to move on. So we talk about our plan being safe, strong, and ready. Safe, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about safety protocols tonight. Strong is that resilience that continues to happen within our staff and within our community. In order to be ready, we know that takes some time. So that first week of school, August 4th to the 7th, will be early release. That will be 2 hours earlier than a normal release. And then every Wednesday during the first semester will be an early release of 2 hours. That is very intentional time for teacher professional development, for collaboration, for planning, for reflection, what's working, where are we stuck, how do we get some additional help, where are our successes. And I honestly believe that first week of early release is going to be very important time that our school level leaders have with their staff to be able to connect with them, to bring them back, because there are going to be stories of heartache. And we are going to have to build in time for our staff to be consoled, to be able to talk with one another, to take good care of each other, and to bolster up their skills as they come back. And we have not seen our kids for almost it'll be 5 months by the time we open up our schools. So we have to be very cognizant and compassionate as our staff enter back into school and our kids come back into our system. The next slide, I am going to turn back over to, oh no, that's still me. So you will see that our plan is safe, strong, and ready. Our goal is, after we hear feedback and some perspectives from our governing board this evening, we have our communications team on the ready that are going to be making changes on the fly so that we can publish our plan on our website tomorrow morning. So, well, actually, we're going to go through some of the details with our administrators tomorrow morning, and we will have this on our website ready to go for our community to be able to read through all of the details. So this is what you will see when we talk about safe, strong, ready. That is what we have named our plan. And it is a forward-thinking plan to open up our schools. And again, it's that three-phased approach, moving from remote, getting us to in-person when we believe that it is safe to do so. The next slide. I think we're ready for the next slide, Cody. There we go. And again, giving some definition to those three models. Oftentimes in education, we can get tangled up in our own edu-speak. So I want to make sure that we have laid this out, that remote learning is online learning for students provided by Mesa public school teachers. You will see in that remote environment that has lots of different strategies built inside of it. Modified in person allows physical distancing by reducing the number of students in a classroom, and it combines both in-person and remote models. And then in-person is what you would expect of a most like normal school day with additional safety protocols in place. So those are our definitions to hang on to as we move throughout the plan. Now we're going to advance one more time, Cody. And let's jump into remote learning. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tracy Eastless, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, as well as Mrs. Teresa Baca, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Special Education. They have worked together on what our instructional model looks like, both for our general education students as well as our special education students. So with that, Dr. Eastless.
Thank you, Dr. Forlis. Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board. I think Ina is going to give me, or Cody's going to give me control here so I can share my screen as well. And I'm hoping everyone can see that. Yes? Okay. So our remote learning plan, August 4th, begins the first day of school in this environment. This environment is going to look a little bit different than what we've experienced in March through May. As Mrs. Williams and Dr. Forlis explained, we've taken lots and lots of feedback and reviewed data and input from our families, our students, our teachers, our leaders, and our design teams have worked tremendously hard over the past couple of months to design a plan for remote learning that's going to be much more structured, more enhanced than what we saw. We know it's, oh, yeah.
This is Ina. We can't see your screen. Can you share it?
I am sharing. Let's try something different here. Maybe it's this one. Let's try that.
There we go.
Is that better? Okay, thank you.
And then if you'll,
yeah.
I don't know if you can hit present for us so that we can see the slide.
It looks like I don't have, here we go. Okay, here we are.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, our design teams knew that it was super important that we want to make sure we are engaging our kids through this structured and enhanced model that looks a little bit different than it did when we ended school. In our remote learning model, we will talk about two different things: the synchronous learning, where kids are learning together. It's live, perhaps through video, through WebEx and different mediums with their teacher and other students. And then we're going to talk a little bit about asynchronous, and that's where kids may be working in self-paced assignments and modules that their teachers are assigning them, their projects, but it's not happening live. And so as we developed our expectations for the remote learning plan, we came up with some of the areas based on that data and feedback. And we have some big buckets, and these are some recommendations for not only our families, but what are those expectations to ensure that our students are engaging, they're learning. What do teachers expect? What do we expect from our teachers in terms of engaging with kids and what that remote learning environment looks like? And then how can we also ensure that our leaders are supporting our teachers and our students and our families? And so you'll see this document shares some big buckets that we're calling in terms of those expectations for each of those audiences. And the first one is instruction and assessment. And you'll see a number of items here. And as we go through some of the sample schedules later, and you'll hear some of the pieces along the way when we get through the details and the plans are posted, these are, for example, what kids will be expected to do in terms of their daily learning, their weekly learning, how they're going to be assessed, what kinds of feedback is going to be provided, not only to kids, but also to families, and how families can access what's happening in that remote learning. And so we're going to expect that kids are participating in the training and the guidelines around remote learning, and they'll be trained both synchronously and asynchronously from their teachers. Teachers will be connecting with kids on a weekly basis. There may be some unique challenges as things are getting started and technology is getting balanced at home, and devices are handed out and things like that. So there will be some flexibility, as Dr. Wallace talked about. Those first couple of weeks, we'll be easing into it and providing each other feedback and support. We expect families to be communicating with us to let us know what's challenging, what's working, what do you need. Teachers will be posting their schedules, and they'll be recording and posting synchronous learning. They're going to be creating plans. Leaders will be sharing what those plans look like. They'll be checking in, dropping into remote learning sessions, providing feedback to staff, and ultimately making sure that we've got all the supports needed in place. We'll expect students to be logging in every single day for learning, and we'll talk about the little details about that when we get to the sample schedules. They'll be accessing the Canvas platform. We heard loud and clear from our families and our students, and even our teachers, that it was kind of difficult in March when we had to go through emergency learning to balance out different platforms and how do we upload different supplemental programs and things. So we've got what our EdTech team calls the front door access through Canvas, and we'll be providing some training around that for all of our audiences on what that looks like. Something very different from when we closed schools and went into the emergency remote learning, where students were able to maintain or improve their grades. We're back to the MPS grading guidelines, and students will be expected to make progress and meet the competencies within the standards and apply their learning in both synchronous and asynchronous models and fashion. Teachers will be posting grades. Families will be expected to monitor those via Canvas, via the parent portal. We're going to ask for family support on helping increase our student motivation and engagement. And with that, we'll be connecting with our families to reach out when we don't hear from you, when we don't see somebody logging in. We're going to find out why. We're going to have teachers checking in with kids, counselors checking in with kids, and our leaders maintaining that presence, whether it's checking in and dropping into a synchronous lesson, contacting our families, checking in with kids, meeting with the counselors. In our technology needs and supports, you'll hear a little bit later around the details of what that's going to look like. But as far as our learning model, we expect that students are going to follow those expectations and guidelines, and that teachers are going to explicitly teach those, just like we would teach behaviors in the classroom. There's certain behaviors and expectations that we expect of our students, of our teachers, and of our leaders within technology, and how to care for devices, and how do we how are we respectful to one another in that environment? And then we also hope that our parents are going to help support us and monitor the use and care of those devices. Professional learning is huge. As Dr. Forlis talked about, those Wednesdays are going to be super important and prized time for our collaborative teams to work together, to communicate with one another about what is working and what's still needed. This is still a brand new environment for many, and so all along the way we'll be providing that job embedded support, not only for our teachers, but also for our students and leaders, and ultimately our parents as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to that specific piece on support. So again, we've got these expectations for all of these audiences in this remote learning environment in these buckets. Another thing that we want to make sure is that we're safe, we're healthy. Our students have been away for a long time, and our teachers haven't talked to many of them over the summer. We want to ensure that we're engaging with them. We have check-ins. We know that families need resources and support. So all of our teachers, our leaders, our counselors, and so forth will be checking in with students on a weekly basis. We'll be inviting families to share their challenges and their celebrations in this crazy environment that we're in at the moment, and providing multiple modes and resources of communication so that we can connect students and families and teachers and leaders to resources that are needed in this remote learning. At this moment, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Baca, and she's going to talk a little bit about the special education specific expectations.
Good evening, board and teachers, staff, and our families listening in tonight. So all of the expectations that have been set by our design team that Dr. Islas just reviewed, those apply to all of our teachers, all of our staff. And these here are additions that are for specific to our special education teachers and leaders, and some recommendations for our parents. So in addition to all the learning that all of our teachers will be taking part in over the next couple of weeks, our department also had a major update to Synergy Special Ed. So our teachers will be participating in that training. But you can see key to our work and the foundation of all work around specially designed instruction and those related services is the IEP. So we really recommend that our parents review their most recent IEP, gather their questions, and prepare for those conversations with teachers. We believe that that's going to be the springboard to a meaningful experience starting August the 4th. So you can see on and on here, our teachers have a tremendous amount of expectations on their shoulders. I think they are the longest list out of everybody in this group, our teachers. And so there's just additions here in our grading for special education. Our document that we rely on, our progress monitoring and discussing with parents progress students are making or not making. Either one is equally as important. And we know in this long separation from our students that we are going to have to spend a great deal of time assessing our students upon return to understand where we start with them and begin their learning now in August. And our parents, of course, are our partners in understanding where our students are at in their current academic skills and also their social emotional learning and behavior for many of our students. So these are the specific items for our special ed teachers, keeping in mind that in addition to this, all of the above expectations are also part of our special education community.
Okay. And so now we're going to take you a little bit through what a sample schedule might look like for a 3rd grader, an 8th grader, and an 11th grader. Again, we have taken a lot of feedback and data. Our design teams have worked together to ensure that we are engaging our kids, that we're checking in with them and communicating with them and providing feedback as we move into this first quarter next year. So within 3rd grade, Most of you know, as we had our board meeting a few weeks ago, we adopted a curriculum called Florida Virtual, which is a research-based national curriculum. It was purchased for as a resource for our teachers that can be enhanced in their live lessons. Teachers will be able to assign asynchronous projects. Those, while they're not live, kids will be working on projects and tasks and completing assignments, and it can be supplemented as needed, but is meant to provide consistency across our schools and our sites, as well as provide some easier transition for students and teachers as we move between models. And it will be integrated into the Canvas platform from kindergarten through 6th grade. Our programs such as Montessori and Franklin and some of our special programming, some of our required services like Gifted and Talented or for English language learners, those curriculum and those lessons will be enhanced. Some Florida virtual content may be assigned and utilized, but then teachers will be able to enhance some of that curriculum again through that Canvas platform. So we're going to take you through a 3rd grade, again, sample schedule for what this may look like. Remote learning is different than what face-to-face or in-person looks like. You can't just take a live lesson and place it in there in a Canvas platform, but teachers can certainly record lessons. They can assign modules and practice just like they would do if we were face-to-face. But if we take a look at the day of a possible schedule for a 3rd grader, and knowing that some of this may shift in terms of order, needs based on students and their assessments and how they're progressing, but this is recommended time for a 3rd grader developmentally and some of the things that you might see throughout the day. And as we explained in the teacher expectations documents, teachers will be checking in with students. They'll be providing live lessons 2 to 3 times a week, as well as assigning modules for self-paced learning throughout that week. And those schedules will be posted for students and parents ahead of time so that everybody knows what's happening. Within the Florida virtual curriculum, kids can and will be taught how to, in 3rd grade and up, for example, how to manage their learning, create schedules, and go through digital citizenship and academic integrity and what does that mean in this kind of environment. So, for example, in the beginning, it might be where a teacher is having kids check in for a morning meeting. They're ensuring that they see all their kids, their kids are social and they're connecting back with their friends, providing what that schedule is going to look like. And of course, this will be eased in over time as teachers are training the kids on those expectations, and for our littles, training the parents and helping parents and support those who are supporting the kids at home. They may have 10 to 15 minutes of interventions, whole group or small group instruction, where they're making appointments maybe with some kids, or their whole class is doing a lesson around friendship or the skills that that class is needing for that week or for that month. Our English language arts, again, in a 3rd grade, we would expect 45 to 60 minutes per day of this whole group, small group, individual or self-paced, that's synchronous or asynchronous depending on the day, but that the kids are engaging in online learning through Canvas via Florida Virtual or some other teacher-created lessons, read alouds, assigning writing projects, and integrating some of those other pieces. We want to ensure that our kids are taking breaks, that they're not sitting in front of a screen all day long, but that we're teaching them and supporting families on what that looks like to create that daily schedule on taking breaks and being creative and getting some physical activity. Specials will still be provided at our elementary level for those grades that have PE, art, and music, and those will be provided through the Canvas platform, and some Florida virtual lessons will be embedded in that as well. And then we'll have interventions and enrichment, just like we always do, for students who may need some extra support, more rigorous supports in reading, writing, and math, as well as some remediation or extra practice. And so again, that time will be spent around 20 to 30 minutes throughout that day. Obviously, we want you to eat and stay happy and healthy, so we got to take a lunch break there. And then you may see another 45 to 60 minutes for math. And again, that's where students will be engaging in live lessons. Teachers may also record lessons and post those so that kids can get those in an asynchronous manner, or if they're working and they need some extra help, or parents might need some strategies, those will be available where teachers can post those and kids and families can access those at any time in that Canvas platform. And then again, some more brain breaks, and then our science and social science standards, again, through Florida Virtual and enhanced curriculum, both live instruction and assignments that kids will be submitting throughout the day and throughout the week. On the teacher side of things, it matches exactly what the kids are doing. The teachers will be expected to post their schedules and work with students and parents so that parents know exactly what's to be expected in the Canvas platform and in the Florida Virtual curriculum. There will be pacing guides, and kids will know exactly when things are to be submitted. They'll know when there might be a WebEx conference that's scheduled for live instruction. They'll still have their daily prep and lunch throughout that day. While specials are being offered, our staff will be provided teaching specials, and then the general ed teachers and our staff will be on prep or lunch. And then again, they're going to be assessing and providing feedback throughout, both within Canvas, through formal assessments, through informal assessments, through conversation in live collaborative instruction and live lessons, and using different kinds of resources that they'll also post and can place in Canvas for supplemental things. And then I will turn it over here to Teresa Baca to talk a little bit about our specially designed instruction.
So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to give a little bit of background and acknowledge many of the concerns and I think fears that our parents who have students with disabilities. So the shift to distance learning presented several challenges and concerns for students with learning disabilities, starting with a dramatic change in the daily structure of learning. So many of our students struggle with organizing their work online or focusing and completing tasks. And we know just through our IEP goals and how we support our students that many of them are developing their executive function skills and require reminders and support to develop their routines. Executive function is responsible for many skills that are critical to success in a remote learning environment. And those include the ability to pay attention for extended periods, organizing, prioritizing, starting tasks and staying focused on them to completion, understanding different points of view, regulating their emotions, and self-monitoring, basically keeping track of what they're doing day to day. So when our students are under stress, and I think that, you know, this is a stressful environment for them, it feels very different, that the brain executive function gets very tasked when any of us are under stress, but especially a student who doesn't quite have developed these skills. So as we've anticipated the needs of our students, we have planned to provide our teachers with resources to maximize student participation and progress in a remote learning environment. So up here, you can click on these at any time, but Tracy, if you would click on the visual schedules. So for many of our students, oh, I'm sorry, not that one.
Sorry, wrong one, okay. This one.
So we encourage our teachers, and our speech therapists are very much a part of creating these visual schedules. So in collaborating with our parents, the more often our students see schedules as part of their daily life, posted up on the refrigerator, posted on their computer, on their journal. So we want to make sure that our students have these visual reminders of what being in school, whether it's remote or in a bricks and mortar situation, that they have some stability and they begin to feel comfortable about their environment, because we know that's very important to the success of our students who have disabilities. So we'll be working with our teachers and our speech therapists for parents and students that need these visual schedules, that we will be supporting and helping them develop them or providing them for them. You can go back, Tracy. So one of the most important thing about routines for special needs children is that it helps them to build their confidence in themselves and in their relationship with their teacher. So when a child has an established schedule to follow and knows what is expected from them, how long they have to get a job done, an assignment done, it will help them to manage their time and their behavior better. So we're also keenly aware, just as in general ed, of social emotional supports and really working through the Sanford Harmony. You can see here we've attached a sample 4-week lesson, which is for grades 1 and 2. And these resources are available to all of our teachers from pre-K up to grade 6. And it's very well laid out, and teachers can do these lessons. There are parent letters that accompany this resource and home activities, stories, songs, games that can be engaged in on a family night with the child and the whole family involved in this social emotional learning. So for us, it's very important that our teachers can have weekly lessons using Sanford Harmony for social emotional support. And that one's over to Tracy. And we know that this sample here of 3rd grade that was shown, this is for a resource student, and we know that collaboration is going to be key to the success of our students during remote learning. While most of our students who have specific learning disabilities spend 80% of their day or more in a general ed classroom, in order for them to be able to access the general ed curriculum, our special education teachers are their advocates and their teachers to ensure that students have appropriate accommodations and modifications in the general ed curriculum, whether that's Florida virtual or teachers are doing other assignments in Canvas, that our teacher role is to be our students' advocates and ensuring accommodations and modifications are there. So very much a day of a child with a specific learning disability in a resource setting will look very much like their general ed peers. And so that, I think, gives a really good picture. Tracy, if you go to the bottom, there's a, there it says 3rd grade program continuums. Ms. Richardson, your question was so great. We spent hours thinking about what our day in the life of our student and teachers look like. So I told Dr. Forless, I can never go without telling a story, and I'm not going to tell this story, but if you're interested, this is just a narrative of what a child resource classroom looks like. And if you scroll down, Tracy, towards the bottom, we talk more about our self-contained students. And I think many of our families are very concerned about progress and what it will look like for their child who has a more significant or severe disability. So Tracy, if you go to the bottom, there's a link to a self-contained schedule down
this one?
No.
More.
One
Here
more
we go.
Sample 3rd grade schedule. So this is a schedule for a self-contained student and supporting our teachers to make this their reality. We've kind of broken it down here of what morning routines look like. We encourage our self-contained teachers to continue with those circle time and community building with their smaller group of students, that they're working with their speech pathologist and collaborating in the classroom. There's academic learning you can see here, math, reading, writing, going down, again, having lunch and some movement time. Again, academic learning and time for specials. And then really key, we believe that supporting our families will be at the very end, Tracy, here is this really important time for daily teacher office hours and prep focused on communicating with our parents, IEP meetings, and making those individual student connections. This is a scary time for our parents as they're concerned about their children losing momentum in their progress. And so we know that this collaboration with our families is going to be key to not only our teacher success, but clearly our student success. So we want to really make sure our teachers have time every day in their day built in to dedicate to that really vital communication. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on here? And you'll see also the collaboration, as Mrs. Baca talked a lot about the social emotional learning, that'll be happening in the regular third graders day too. And we've got lots of professional learning set up for teachers. Tomorrow, as Mrs. Baca talked about with some of the executive functioning, there'll be classes that are released for our teachers all throughout the next few weeks that they can sign up for on strategies to help them with some of those things. And within the Florida virtual curriculum, much like the student who has special needs, that will also help teachers and students create those sample visual schedules and how to monitor their time and manage their time in this remote environment. Okay, so now we're going to head over to an 8th grade schedule. And here we've got a couple of samples. We'll still be working with some of our administrators tomorrow and sharing some of these ideas. They've been providing a lot of feedback on what this might look like in the secondary world as kids have multiple periods and teachers are managing multiple courses as well, and lots of students, and how to ensure that they're checking in with those kids daily and weekly, posting their schedules again. And so what this might look like on the student side, you'll see this is an 8th grade student enrolled in English, 8th grade English and math, science, so just a normal schedule and what that might look like. But what happens is, and we've just put a couple of days here, for example, for this child, his first period is English, and on Monday the teacher might be delivering a lesson live through WebEx, which is logged in and connected through the Canvas platform. And so teachers are teaching the lesson in real time. On Tuesday in that child's English class, he might go through some of the modules or the projects that the teachers have assigned. And some of those might be due that day for submission, and some of them might be not until to the end of the week or even into the next week if it's a larger project and unit that they're studying, or a writing project in English. And so same thing for math now. It might be where the teacher has scheduled some time with some small groups of students during that second period time on that child's schedule, where that teacher is meeting again synchronously through WebEx in the Canvas platform to either provide some new learning or more enriched or practice on a concept that they might have had a live lesson on the day before or a few days prior. Or the teacher was looking at some of the projects and the asynchronous modules and submissions that kids were submitting and providing feedback, and felt that they needed to do another lesson with this group of children during the second period. And so you'll see that will rotate back and forth so that we can ensure that kids, again, aren't overloaded, and getting these live lessons online, again, looks a little bit different than when we're in person. And so there will be a balance between 2 to 3 days a week, perhaps, for those live new learning lessons, and then some practice and self-paced projects with ongoing feedback from teachers throughout the week on those submissions. And then again, following those grading practices, making sure that kids know and set goals and how they're meeting those competencies, and then posting those grades within Canvas and through the parent portal for parents to check and students to check, and going back to those expectations. Again, they'll have their lunch and they'll still have access to all of their content through the Canvas platform. Some of the content will be teacher created from our district adopted resources, supplemental resources, and then teachers will also have some access to the MDLP content that they can utilize within Canvas as well. On the teacher side, in this particular sample, this 8th grader is a math teacher, and it just mirrors what the student is doing in some cases, but this teacher's a math teacher. So they're teaching 8th grade math first period, and on Monday they might be doing again that small group instruction or some interventions, and on Tuesday a live lesson. And so this would flip back and forth based on the needs of the classroom, based on student needs and where they're at in terms of progress in their learning. Another option, well, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Baca for this option, or do you want to wait until we get through the second option?
let's go ahead and do the second option.
Okay. So this is another sample schedule that we're working through. And what this might look like from the student lens is that on first period, this child has English. And so this is kind of a week at a glance. And this might be where students and teachers have different days where they're working on live lessons for maybe their first 3 periods, asynchronously on the rest of those days. So for example, on Monday and Tuesday in English, this child has a live lesson with their teacher delivered in real time on Monday, and then they've been assigned some modules within Canvas. While that teacher has assigned those modules in Canvas, they're grading those assignments, they're giving feedback, they might be pulling small groups. On Thursday and Friday, it looks similar again for that first period, a live lesson and then asynchronous learning. On Wednesday, that English teacher who's teaching those students is providing tutoring. It's office hours so that students can check in. It might be a collaborative lesson synchronously or self-paced asynchronously. Counselors may be checking in with kids at that point, but this is a balance between different periods throughout the week, and where that Wednesday half day or early release day is really spent on that intensive check-in, that intensive feedback, that intensive connections where parents can check in through office hours throughout the day and so forth. And you'll see that mirrored over here on this math teacher side. So again, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, they are providing those 2 times a week of the live synchronous lessons, and then the asynchronous work the other days, with that Wednesday being some time for office hours and or small group instruction, working with our collaborative teams in the afternoons because it's early release, and then to look at student data, to ensure they're collaborating to provide supports and do more check-ins, and then also to participate in professional learning with all the social emotional learning that they're going to need in terms of how do we best support our students, how do we provide more executive functioning skills, what are some new strategies for remote learning, and then even building some more content in their Canvas to supplement what they've already built or are still creating. So that's a different option for what an 8th grade schedule might look like. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Baca.
So again, our resource students will participate in general ed to receive their content for the fullest extent possible. Their specially designed instruction, that's the time they spend with their special education teacher working on their IEP goals, of course, around math and reading and writing. So that is the focus of specially designed instruction. And they're going to spend most of their time in the general ed following this schedule. Our special ed teachers are going to be the great collaborators that they are alongside their general ed colleagues, ensuring that accommodations and modifications are in place so that students are able to access learning. So junior high here, middle school is very near and dear to my heart. I spent the majority of my teaching and principal career being in this setting with this very, very special age group. So I love them, but I know that there's no group where social learning is not more important. They need to feel connected to their community, connected to their peers, and connected to their teachers. So we're all going to have to get creative out there using our resources to ensure that our junior high students feel that connection and that they know that there are people out there that care about them and want to love on them and make sure that they are learning. So I am very, very just invested in helping our teachers really develop those relationships and be creative. It's not easy, and middle school students, junior high students don't make it easy to make those connections, and especially in remote learning. So we have to be very, very creative and strategic in how we go about meeting the social emotional needs of our junior high students. And you can see here, we've attached a sample applied learning student schedule, and you can look at it later. But these are the course numbers for our students. Of course, all schedules for students with IEPs are very individualized based on student needs. Students have multiple related service time to be met during the week through teletherapy. So this is just sort of a sample that you know, for your review. Thanks, Tracy.
Sorry, I have a little delay for this to move up. There we go. Okay, and then lastly, what does the day of an 11th grader look like? And you'll see that this is very similar to our 8th grade options. Again, they have 7 periods and taking English and math and science and social studies and all of the courses that our secondary kiddos and our electives that they take. Again, this first option here is just a balance of live and asynchronous kinds of lessons and small group projects, but you won't see that designated Wednesday, whereas in option 2, again, those first 3 periods are where the live instruction is, and again, in the sample is on Monday and Thursday, whereas the asynchronous assignments and projects are provided on Tuesdays and Fridays, with those tutoring sessions, the office hours, and so forth on Wednesday. And then the lunch, and then again, those last few periods, it's a flip-flop of the first 3 periods, where my Mondays and my Thursdays are self-paced. They're those asynchronous projects and the practice where my teacher's providing feedback and grading those, opposite of the Tuesdays and Fridays where I'm checking in live to synchronous lessons. So again, from the student perspective, they're engaging every single day. They're being provided feedback every single day and throughout the week. Teachers are available for both live lessons and providing feedback in those asynchronous models. They'll be posting their schedules ahead of time, the week in advance or the Friday in advance of that week, so that students and parents know what to expect. And then they'll have those check-ins, and teachers will have professional learning throughout their day on Wednesdays as well, and working with our collaborative teams, and still have their prep and their lunchtime to ensure that they're prepared and ready to serve our students. On the parent side of all of these schedules, you'll be able to expect that teachers are connecting with you on a weekly basis, that you'll know when those live lessons are going to be scheduled. You'll have a schedule of when those modules and projects and assessments and all of those things, you'll have access to the Canvas portal and the parent portal to see what the grades are being given to your child, and you'll know when the office hours are in case you need to check in with teachers or ask questions. And you'll be able to access all of the assignments in the curriculum and those things that teachers are providing to kids. And Mrs. Baca, 11th grade.
So there again, most of our students, many of our students will follow the general ed schedule and be a part of that. We know that because of those, those fully executive function skills not developed, our students, those critical, being able to complete a task, being able to set timelines and set goals around assignments that are due, those are skills that our students are still developing, and they certainly are barriers when those skills aren't developed and students have multiple tasks to organize, multiple assignments to get done. So it's really important. Again, our special education teachers are our high school student advocates, also making sure that students have accommodations, coaching them, and to get their assignments in on time and to keep them on task and at a pace that is working for them and their skill set. So those are really important collaborations. And our parents, definitely having our parents reach out to our teachers when students are getting overwhelmed and managing all of these very, there's a lot of expectations out there for our students in this remote environment. I recently was on a phone call with a group of parents that I think you got an email about, and had the opportunity to listen to a high school student talk about what his experience was during remote learning. Very smart young man who just had a lot of talent, but just feeling sometimes perhaps not as engaged, and perhaps this wasn't as motivating for him as a bricks and mortar learning environment. So really finding those ways to keep our students not only connected, but motivated and on task to complete their and to manage all of the expectations in a, in a Canvas course, or even, just a remote setting overall. So I think we just have to stay really in tune with what our students, what their social emotional needs are, their learning needs are, and being very, very responsive during those office hours to student conference time and parent conference time, and making sure that accommodations and modifications are in place for our students who have disabilities. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay. And so what supports are going to be in place? This is still a new environment. We're still working our way through what does this look like? How do we best support and engage our students? And how do we ensure that our staff feels ready, feels supported, has the tools that they need to ensure we're engaging our kids? And then how do we support parents? Because we know that you're going to be there to support your kids while they're learning remotely, while they're at home, and how do you keep in contact? How do you check their progress? So we will have professional learning. We've had professional learning all summer long, and it will continue with best practice strategies, with new resources, with social emotional supports for our teachers and leaders, as well as they'll be providing that support for students. For parents, this is just a sample of what we're building out for parent support with. We'll have a Canvas course and Canvas boot camp that's being released soon for parents, and how do you navigate that? What kinds of training do you have available for the different resources, the Florida virtual curriculum? How do we access technology, and how will I use my device and log in if I haven't done that, especially at the elementary level? What are these WebEx meetings, and how do I connect with teachers in office hours or help my student connect to a live lesson? So these are some of the supports that we'll also have available for parents. And those supports will be online. They'll be through the through buttons on our web pages, but they'll also be through phone calls, and in safe cases when we can schedule appointments for in-person support to help walk a parent through how to log into the email, how to access the parent portal, and so forth. Our counselors and coaches throughout the district will be supporting students. They'll be supporting teachers and leaders and providing strategies and ensuring that our kids are engaging and learning and that they feel safe and supported. We'll talk a little bit later, but we're going to have a lot of technology support for our students, for our teachers, for our leaders, and then most importantly for our parents as well, with devices and internet and hotspots. We'll have I Need Help website buttons posted all over our district web pages, our school pages, our department pages, for whatever help you need. And we'll again talk in a few more minutes about what that's going to look like as we navigate through this remote learning environment. And then that ongoing coaching for our teachers and for our students and our parents too. Mrs. Baca, anything you wanted to add there?
No, I think there's a special ed support on the next slide.
Okay, there you go.
So I sit at many, many meetings that often don't start off with the most positive. You come to the table and it may not start off positive. And I always, try to start meetings saying that we have to take a leap of faith and trust that we both want the very best for the child. And so in this case, I think, there is a little leap of faith on our parents' part as we moved into, this structured remote learning environment that will look different than it did in March. So, we think that it's highly, highly important for our teachers to engage parents weekly to support learning, to be there as a resource for our parents, that one-on-one meetings with our families of our students with severe disabilities to develop a highly individualized plan. I stay up at night worrying about this particular group of students who are, it's very difficult to engage with them in a remote learning environment because of their severe disabilities. And we know that, I've taken many calls from our families that are just very concerned and want the very best for their child. So we're committed before August the 4th to meet with every family who have a child in our severe disability program, trying to develop a very specific program using assistive technology, using our related service providers to meet those needs. that we will provide parent info training on how to maximize the outcomes of teletherapy. So that's very new to all of us, is the teletherapy, and we want to make sure that our parents know how to set up the environment and prepare their child to really benefit from their therapy time. That we will have our instructional coaches have been working hard all summer, and that they'll continue to lead professional learning and coaching and those PLC meetings, that will continue our multisensory reading approach with Recipe for Reading. We talked a lot about social emotional well-being and using the resources available. That our IEP meetings will be conducted in prescribed timelines, and that we will continue our evaluation of students and reevaluations within those timelines. I talked a little bit about how important assessment will be when our students return on August the 4th, and being very diligent in that planning and using all available resources to collect data on their progress. And then here's just a list of teacher resources if you have a desire to look more deeply into the resources and training we're providing for our teachers. Thanks, Tracy.
And I think at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Todd Wallace and Michelle Grimaldi.
Thank you, Dr. Eastless and President Minor and members of the board. I do not see the screen, so I'm waiting for Cody to share that. There we go. Thank you. Remote learning is very challenging for all of us, and you know, the governor has allowed that school districts continue to provide childcare for their families. And so MPS fully intends to do that to support our families. We're going to open our Explore programs at all of our 34 locations, which is what our parents expected when we start school on August 4th. So we are going to open those tuition-based K through 6 childcare sites, and we'll provide enrichment and also a safe place where students can access their remote learning and also have facilitators for that remote learning. Information for this will be our registration. We intend to open on July 20th, next Monday, and we will advertise that through every media platform that we have. Michelle, do you want to talk about the Family Support Network?
Michelle, this is Helen. You're on mute, perhaps.
I can talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you like me to go ahead, Helen?
Yes, please, Todd.
Okay. As Dr. Eastless indicated, we will have family support outreach teams. So a teacher might notice during connections with her class roster, his or her class roster, that there might be a family that doesn't log in or is logs in one day and then goes MIA. And so the teacher will have, each school will have a group of staff members who are enlisted as the school outreach team. And the teacher will indicate to that group that there might be an issue with this particular family, and that school team will exhaust all resources to find out what's going on with that family. It could be that they're lacking the technology support that they need. It could be that they have health and safety issues that need to be addressed, whether it's food security or a job or shelter. It could be a variety of things. And so that school group will exhaust, like I said, exhaust all resources to meet the needs of that family. And if they can't meet those needs, they have a district point person that they contact. And that point person, there's Michelle.
There you can. Okay, sorry about that. As Pat mentioned, there are 6 district appointed helpers that if the school team can't find a resource for that family or assistance for that family, one of those 6 folks divided by high school feeder pattern will step in and help organize those needs. Once those needs become a pattern, we will put in motion some of our great partners that we've worked with over the summer, whether that be Midwest Food Bank, AZ Brain Food, we have our Mercy Care partners. So whether it's behavioral health, internet connection, or just food support, we've got some pieces in place that will help. So the system of help would be first the school team that works with the principal, the school counselor, and any designated person that has really deep ties to the community would exhaust their resources. Then it can be kicked up to one of those 6 folks through the district in the feeder pattern, and then it would come to either Marlo Loria, who's in charge of the internet connection, or myself with Mercy Care and some outside providers. So we feel like we're in a good place to help support families. It's more streamlined than we had in the past. Anything else?
I think you got it, Michelle.
Okay, I think we're done. We're quick.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Todd. So it's talking about family support for district laptops. As you remember, in the spring, we closed schools and then we reached out to families to see if they needed a device. And basically, and only those that stated they needed a device is what we gave a device. Our goal this time, which is a short-term goal, is to get every student that needs or wants to borrow a device to get them a device until we receive the City of Mesa devices. In several past conversations with some parents in the spring, parents came to me and said, you know, they had a device at home, they had internet at home on their own, they had it there, but struggled with sharing as some families had multiple students in the home and wanted an additional device. This short-term goal that we're trying to do here is to to assist those students who need a device, as well as those students and families that want to borrow a device. Obviously, our long-term goal is that every student has access to a device to use either at school and or to take home. A true one-to-one district is our ultimate long-term goal. But this goal won't be reality until late September or October or even later, until we get those devices from the City of Mesa that we've ordered. So therefore, our goal today is to get devices to those that need or want to borrow a device. As mentioned in previous board meetings, you know, we're having to touch and prep about 40,000 plus devices and are under a tight time frame. We have a tentative device schedule, which is scheduled to start on July 23rd and go through July 31st. We'll be starting with our high schools and junior highs and working our way to the elementary schools. It's an aggressive schedule, but with help from schools, we as a team can get it done. Speaking of an aggressive schedule, I'd like to take a moment here just to do a shout out to my computer repair team. They are the team that is leading the charge of prepping or imaging those 40,000 plus devices. This team consists of 30 plus computer repair techs, supervisors, copy repair team, the help desk is lending a hand, as well as over 50 student interns. We've also gone to the extent of reaching back out to former student interns and rehired them to help the cause. I appreciate their dedication and willingness to see that we get to all the devices and getting them ready for our students. I mean, obviously they're carrying a heavy load on their shoulders, and we make sure that we make the August 4th start date, which is technically 3 weeks away from today. So just to give you an idea of my team's efforts, They have imaged or prepped over 4,000 devices in the last week and a half. So I would like to personally say thank you to my team for their efforts and just to keep it up. But as of today, we are scheduled to start device distribution on Thursday, July 23rd. As part of the device distribution, we'll be asking parents if they have internet access at home. We'll ask a couple of questions of the type of internet, and we'll also record, if they don't have access to internet. We'll highlight those that don't have internet access and pass this information on to the family support team so that they can either help the family subscribe to the Connect to Compete program or potentially provide them with the Wi-Fi hotspot. We're encouraging families who don't currently have reliable internet access and who qualify for Cox Communications Connect to Compete program to sign up for the $9.95 a month internet program. Families can reach out to their school's family support team or resource person to assist on how to get signed up for the Connect to Compete program. We encourage families to sign up as soon as possible so that the service is ready for their first day of school. We're also exploring options to provide Wi-Fi hotspots to families with financial need or fall out of the Cox service area and that have that need. We encourage those families to reach out to the support team or the resources at their school. As part of technical support, how are we going to help families? We'll be expanding the district help desk hours, and we'll adjust it needed depending on the demand. Our old hours were from 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. But starting next week as device distribution start, we'll expand those help desk hours to open from 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. and to hopefully accommodate those parents or students that might have technical issues and get to us before 5. We'll be closely monitoring the help desk call volume and we'll adjust as necessary. Also, with everyone being remote, our computer repair team will be troubleshooting using remote control software we purchased thanks to the City of Mesa's CARES Act funding. And if the problem can't be resolved remotely, the tech will schedule a time to do an in-person fix or replace a device as needed. Although we've expanded our help desk hours and we encourage students and parents and staff to use the online help desk work order system, which can be found on the IS website or at help.mpsaz.org, and I'm sure it'll be in there as well with one of those I need help buttons. So using the online help desk will help users not having to wait on the call or avoid long call wait times. Hopefully with these extended hours, these help desk hours and remote support, we'll be able to support our students and staff in a time of need. And I think now Mr. Thompson will talk about the food service.
Good evening, everyone, again. So this evening, food service is going to be real quick. I guess the biggest thing I want to make you aware of is we really don't have the summer meal program that we operated under in the spring available to us. We really have to return to the National School Lunch Program as we knew it. Of course, we're not going to be able to do it the way we did it. So what we can share with everyone this evening is that meals will be available at all our schools. This is our current plan. That there'll be a pickup location from 11 to 12:30 Monday through Friday. And because campuses have different layouts, we will be working with the schools directly to communicate to their specific communities about how that pickup is going to work, because some of our cafeterias are easily accessed from the parking lot, others are not. So there's still some logistics to work on in those areas, but in general, we will be feeding kids. It'll be available through the National School Lunch Program. We encourage everybody to use electronic payment so that we can reduce cash and any handling of cash, but there'll be lots of details coming out as we get closer to school. But that's the general concept for now. And who's next? I don't see the next slide, so I'm not sure.
That would be me, Helen Holland.
Hi, Helen. There you go.
Thank you, Scott. So as you might remember, on July 2nd, when we when we came out with our communications about moving to a remote environment for the startup of the school year on August 4th. We suspended the surveys that we had out in the community. We had a parent survey out, we had a teacher survey out, and we were about to launch a non-teaching staff survey to ask them about their preferences for the models. With the switch to going fully remote, we do know we want to go out and get additional information from our families, but we are going to modify that to be focused on proactively helping to determine the support that our families need to be successful in a remote environment. You just heard from so many different colleagues of mine about the supports that we are offering for social and emotional needs, technology needs, food needs, to ensure that our families are successful. So the survey that will launch later this week on July 16th will ask several things. First, it will ask them to help us discern what services they're going to need so that the teams that are standing ready to help them can be prepared for that. So we will do some preliminary work on understanding how many devices are needed in the home, whether or not that home needs access to internet or better internet, to get an understanding of, in the remote environment, how many of our families will want to participate in the meal program that Mr. Thompson just described to you. And most importantly, to help our Explore Enrichment Centers be prepared and properly staffed to welcome those children in who need a safe environment during the day while their parents are at work or otherwise employed, so that the kids have a space where they'll be taken care of and can do their remote learning environments. All of that information will be fed out to those teams so that they can begin preparations to successfully launch on August 4th. The other thing we will begin to explore is more similar to what our previous surveys to our community asked, which will be when it is safe to transition into a new learning model. Do you see at that point in time that this child, that the survey will be on a per child basis for those of you who have multiple students in our community? I apologize in advance for the repetitive surveys, but it does help us get the appropriate information to each school to be able to do it on a student by student basis. So we will be asking those questions, as well as with what you know now, would your intention be to move into the modified in-person when it's available, or would you prefer to remain remote for a longer term and perhaps throughout the semester? So those are the questions. We will be reaching out to our principals, all of our site administrators tomorrow, to help solidify, is there any other additional information they need to make sure that they provide a successful learning environment in the remote world as we start up, and then we will get this out to our communities as soon as possible. And I believe I am turning to Mrs. Williams to discuss some FAQs here.
Yes, thanks, Helen. So you're probably looking at the screen and saying, Holly, there has to be more than 3 FAQs, and I promise you there are. We have developed an extensive list of FAQs that we will have on the website available for everybody to look at and to have the answers to. But I picked, our team picked 3 that really seem to come up a lot, and we wanted to make sure that you had a clear answer on these 3, and I have some details to add to them. So the first one asks about specialty classes like AP and IB, and you can see the answer there, that the teachers will use Canvas to share learning assignments for the students. So there's not a designated, people who are familiar with MDLP, they know that AP is not available on MDLP. The difference in this remote setting is that these are teacher-led classes, and therefore the classes will, the information and the curriculum will be available via Canvas. And Dr. Eastlis mentioned things like Montessori and GIFT and other specialty programs. Our Highland Arts teachers, they will be taking the current curriculum in Florida Virtual and using it as a resource and building out their specific program needs via Canvas for their students also. So there's a lot of opportunities for specialization and meeting the individual needs of a school community and the student in the plans that Dr. Islas and her team have created. Will teachers be expected to teach in all three models at the same time? That comes up a lot. And the answer is no. We anticipate teachers teaching in one model at a time. And we will offer choice. And I'm going to talk about how that choice will be, how we'll gather that information in just a few minutes. And then how will this be different from the spring? Hopefully you heard those components throughout the presentation tonight about how the support is different and how we have expectations and a schedule for students. So you should be able to see that there are significant enhancements in the way that we are supporting families and students, and asking teachers and giving them the curriculum to build out their Canvas platform with the best information and the best curriculum that they can have to make learning continue for our students. So, Governing Board, you've heard a lot about remote learning, and you know that this is how we will open on August 4th. Before we proceed in the presentation, I would like to know if the Governing Board has any comments or questions that you'd like to address about remote learning or what you've heard so far.
Mrs. Williams, I would imagine our board has a lot of questions, and I know that we could go really into the weeds here and ask very specific questions on details on the classroom experience remotely, etc. But what I have been, and I know we have to keep track of our time here because we could be here a very long time. But when I was watching Dr. Islas present the different scenarios, what was going through my mind and what I was thinking would possibly be going through parents' mind is how specifically will that look in their family room, bedroom, kitchen table each day? Are they going to be sitting in front of their computer at a specific time on specific days, where there will be other people that will be in their assigned class, remote learning class, doing it at the exact same time, whether that's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or whatever, on those days when it is a lesson where the students are there, as you call it, the synchronous. My next new word. I have learned so many this year. Are they going to be doing that on the days when they are with the instructor, and on the off days they will have been given assignments, and they can do that anytime on those days, of course, as long as they get those done in a timely fashion as given by their instructor. And of course, the obvious question is, are all families going to be able to meet at those same times in that classrooms? And is there going to be flexibility built in so that if they cannot meet at those times, they can either it's live stream so that they can go back and see it and view it, much like our board meeting is tonight? And so those are some of the questions. I think that our families are anxious to have an understanding is what, if we're not going to be sitting in classrooms, how will I look every day? How will a learning experience be? You gave some great details on what they will be seeing as far as how the curriculum would roll out. But I think they also want to know, how am I going to navigate each day on computer? And that's hopefully an easier question than going through every little tiny detail that we could on all the logistics of this.
Yeah, I'm going to take a stab at it, and if I get it wrong, Dr. Islas, I want you to jump in. But a short answer, Mrs. Miner, is the teachers will provide a schedule for the week, so the parent knows what to expect that week. So let's say, for instance, on Monday, there would maybe be 2 periods of time that the student would need to be logged on with their class, and they know in advance that those are the times. But just as you said, the idea of the asynchronous, that's the independent time to work, and that could be scheduled. That's a little more flexible. That's when parents can allow their students some different breaks. The idea of the schedule that we provided today, the sample schedule, was to give parents a sense of how much time their students should be spending each day working on school. And because we heard from last spring that it was not always clear. And so our hope is by creating a very clear schedule with specifically scheduled meeting times for class and specific assignments that need to be done during the week that a parent can get their hands around how much time their students should be spending working on school and the lessons associated. How'd I do, Dr. Islas? Did I get close?
That was great. And also just to extend on that, I know Mrs. Miner talking about what does that look like in my living room and during the day when my child's working on those asynchronous, those can be flexible, as well as if a child has a challenge in meeting a live lesson, just like in an in-person situation, if they had a dentist appointment or something and they missed that live lesson, then that's when we need the student and the teacher to work together to figure out a way to make up that assignment. And it might look like a recording that day, or that was live streamed, or a teacher meeting on one of those office hours or those tutoring sessions to catch that student up to reteach that concept or provide some extra support.
When they're in the classroom setting, are the students going to be able to see, like we can see on our WebEx right now? I can see your face, Dr. Islas, and I can see other board members. Are those students going to be able to see other children in their classroom and have some kind of association with a set group of children every day that resembles the classroom that they're accustomed to seeing?
Yes, if they turn their camera on, they'll be able to see each other and one another. And part of those expectations in regard to digital citizenship also is, how do we behave in a remote setting? How do we behave in front of cameras, just like we would have expectations in the classroom? So yes, they would be able to see one another if their cameras are turned on.
And then I really am not trying to hog all the time. I will relinquish my post here and let others talk. And then so when you're talking about a junior high or high school setting, they will have specific hours for the classes, as you showed in your diagram, in your diagram on the screen. Anyway, your PowerPoint, there we go. On your PowerPoint, they will have maybe a math class, and then they will move to another classroom situation with a different group of students. And we will, of course, be able to tell them how they would navigate through that technically. But then they would have a variety of different groups of teachers as well as classroom students in their class. So it would be very similar to elementary, but in individual classes, much like junior high and high school is in live classroom settings. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if I understand your question, the elementary kids will be assigned a homeroom teacher, just like they are in an in-person situation. And so they'll have their group of colleagues or peers in their classroom. In the secondary setting, they'll be scheduled into their courses that they registered for, and they'll have their different, scheduled within Synergy, just like they always do. So they'll move through periods with the cohort of students that are registered for the same, class course. And then elementary, again, will move through with their homeroom through one teacher teaching all of the content, just like they would in an in-person situation.
Right. And the teachers that are on the other side of that, they will have a certain amount of time in one period or one group of students. They will then transition to a next period with a different group of students and possibly a variation of the subject matter. And that would be how their day would look. So it would start maybe at 8 o'clock on those particular days, on a Monday, let's say, and go through till 4 o'clock. Maybe not as long as a regular school day, because remote learning doesn't have to have the length to it as a regular school day, but something similar flow as a regular school day. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It'll look much more structured at the beginning. And then as teachers and families and students become more comfortable, then, they'll be designing units of instruction. And so you'll see that balance of the live learning and the lessons of the new concepts, and then again, that practice and those asynchronous or when they're not together live, the practice and the projects and those kinds of things throughout the week. And so the challenge of that right now are those logistics of ensuring that kids are not having to log in live from 8 to 4, but that teachers are on the teacher side, that they're being able to balance their workload too as they're providing those concepts a couple, 2 or 3 times a week live, posting some of those things, and then ensuring that they're assigning projects that are really those essential standards and helping kids to progress through those competencies and provide that feedback to students and families and what that looks like. And that's going to be where a lot of that learning comes in, the professional learning throughout the first few weeks of school, and helping balance what that looks like within a student's family and for a particular student. If we've got to make accommodations, that's where that I need help button comes in, or the office hours, so that we can make sure that everybody's engaging and that the workload is balanced as well for our teachers.
The second piece to that, I'm sure that parents with multiple children in multiple grades are asking, how will I navigate through this? Do I need many computers? Every child in my family would need a computer, which right now I know we're trying to have one computer to some families because there's a shortage until we can get our computers in by October that we have ordered, that are on back order. How they can manage multiple children in a household with multiple schedules. And I know that's a logistical thing, and I, again, don't want to get in too many weeds, but I'm sure they're asking these questions and are interested so that they have some level of comfort as to what they're signing up for when they make a decision to what they're going to do in the fall. Or in our case, summer.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I know David Sanders has talked a little bit about the plan for that device distribution, and Mrs. Hollins has talked about that survey data, again, going out on who needs those devices, how we'll prioritize those devices, who already has devices at home, and then making sure that we get that connectivity out there as well. I don't know if Mr. Sanders or Mrs. Hollins, if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yes, Ms. Lisa. So Ms. Minor, this is Dave Sanders. So yeah, we kind of, like it's kind of like mentioned in my presentation. I did talk to parents that have multiple students, and we do, if a family does fall into that need, I would consider that's a need. So if a family does have multiple students and they have one computer at home, I say that's a need. So that's what we are planning for that, and that is our goal to reach out to those types of families as well, especially that type of family and those that definitely don't have a device at home.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't mean to hog all the time. So I have, of course, more questions, as I know many others do. So I'm going to let others have an opportunity to ask questions too. I don't want to take up too much of the time. So other board members, please jump in. And thank you, Dr. Isis and Mr. Sanders. I appreciate that.
I have dozens of questions as well, but I can kind of wrap my around what a high school is like. But I can't for parents to listen to this and said, this sounds like I manage for 4 hours a day that I'm actively hands-on involved. And it sounds like maybe my K through third grader is sitting in front of a computer for multiple hours a day. Is that what it looks like? And when I in the morning, how do I just click on a button on my school's website? Log in. Where do they even know how to go in the morning? And what if I work? Morning, but 3 to 7 at night.
Mrs. Richardson, you were breaking up just a bit. I think that question is for Dr. Eastlis and for Mrs. Baca, and it sounds a bit like the technology with Dr. Eastlis can talk to the technology as well around. I think what I heard was how do I know how I wake up in the morning? I get my device. How do I know how to log in? What do I do? So Tracy, you want to talk through some of that around those procedures that will be taught at the beginning of the school year?
Yes, thank you. And I'm hoping I heard some of that too. Like Dr. Forla said, you broke up a little bit, but let me know if I can expand. We will have what we call parent boot camps, and our teachers and our ed tech staff will be providing information, tutorials and phone calls and web conferencing and however we need to provide that support to our families, especially of the youngers who there's going to be a lot more support, and our elementary folks who may not have had access before to this type of technology. We'll be providing lots of support, especially those first couple of weeks of school as we're getting into the half days, those first 2 weeks, and making sure that everybody's got devices, everybody has access, and then how do we get into Canvas? And that's going to be the first thing, is how do we access Canvas? And it's a web-based program. It is very easy to navigate. It'll be the click of a button and accessing through the students' credentials, and teachers will walk students and families through that for those families who have to do a little bit more support of their students for those littles. And no, it is not our goal to have especially a kindergartner logged in on that computer from 8 to 3 every single day. We've taken into account lots of research around best practice and the amount of time that students should be logged in, and also knowing that we've got to provide some flexibility. So for example, if my classroom meeting is at 8 o'clock in the morning meeting, and that simply doesn't work for the majority of my class, then I'm going to have to change that, and I'm going to have to be a little bit more flexible. If it's 1 or 2 kids that's really a challenge for, that's where we really need families and parents to reach out to teachers, and our teachers will work to provide some flexibility in that, whether it's recording lessons or switching up the different times that they're going to be doing lessons, but always making sure that we communicate with families so that they know ahead of time. So for example, on a Friday, if I'm a 3rd grade teacher, I'm posting on my school classroom website. I might be sending a school messenger out to say, here is my schedule for next week. And then the way that the Florida virtual curriculum will work, we'll definitely again be training students, and we'll be training families as well, and what that looks like in terms of that weekly schedule, so that the kids will be learning in baby steps along the way. This is how I'm going to log in and where I have to go. And it's a very user-friendly curriculum, and Canvas at the elementary level looks different than it does at the secondary level. And we will release pieces in bits. So it's baby steps along the way. We know this is a progression of learning and strategies for everyone. So there will be support all along the way, and there will be flexibility, especially for those families who've got multiple kids and maybe are sharing some devices. We're just going to have to work with those families to be creative in some of that scheduling for some of those individual kiddos. I hope that answered your question.
I'm sorry. I'm somewhere I don't have internet and connectivity, which probably some of our families can relate to. Talk to me about language barriers. What language will we have for families? How will it be available to families of different language abilities?
So in the Florida virtual curriculum, they do have some translation available and accommodations there. We also in our district have access to our language line, which has over hundreds of languages available. And we will still be following the state required program or requirements for our second language learners. And so they will have the supports of those specially trained teachers, the resources that go along. In addition to the Florida virtual, they'll have specialized resources as well for those students who are learning another language and need those extra supports. But the translation services will be available through our language line and through our multiple coaches and specialists that can assist with those pieces. And the family support teams will help as we find out what those needs are. We will work our best to problem solve and provide those supports.
And Mrs. Richardson and members of the board, our Opening Schools website will be have a Spanish version as well. So we will have it in both English and Spanish.
I think my comments are more in awe, I guess, from the standpoint of we've taken the best we can with the situation we have and trying to reinvent ourselves now into an online platform. I see a situation where you've created a framework here with concepts and plans, but the meat of the execution is going to fall heavily upon our parents and upon our teachers to be able to take and deliver the content manner that is exciting or will captivate or help to grow. And so I guess I just throw my support and encouragement in any way we can to support those who really have to execute on this idea then of in-home learning until we can get back to more of the platform we're used to, and that being more of in a one-on-one setting. But yeah, there's lots of questions I'm sure that others have, but the execution is going to fall heavily upon our teachers, our staff, and upon our parents, and applaud them for the efforts yet to come, I'm sure.
I have a question around, I feel like this is maybe a pause in the presentation for questions. I guess my question is, what else is there to present after this segment?
We're going to walk through, Mrs. Steers, the potential transition to the modified in-person and give some a brief summary of what that might look like when we can get there. And then we have just a very brief touch on in-person, because that's going to be most familiar to us, and that's mostly around the safety features. And then we'll talk to you about return to work, our staff, and some of the other supports that we have in place for our staff and how we're handling COVID reporting. So we have about 10 slides after this to share with you.
Okay, I will reserve my comments to after the conclusion of the full presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sears.
Thank you, Mrs. Sears. That's awesome, and I concur. Let's move on and see what more you have to present, so we can. I understand we have a lot of people who have input at the end of our your presentation. So let's move on at this point.
Okay, Cody, if you mind going on to the next slide, slide 21. This is just a graphic so you can kind of see this transition that we are anticipating. And I'd love to tell you that we have a date, and I have a crystal ball to tell you when we will be able to make this. But what I want you to see on this graphic is that we are starting in remote learning on August 4th, and we are taking a phased approach when it is safe, when the community sees better control of the COVID pandemic than we are currently experiencing. We will make a transition to modified in-person for our students. And at that time, we will take a time to make that transition. So it won't be we flip a switch and say Friday, we're going to move on Monday to modified in-person. We plan on a 2-week transition period so that families and students have plenty of notice. They have a time to tell us during that time whether they'd like to remain in remote learning or move to the modified. And it gives teachers and principals and our families time to plan for that change. We will announce it well in advance. It will be well communicated, and we will provide the supports and do another update with the governing board, again, to show you what that will look like. I don't have a date for that, but you can see the supports that we've the items that we're presenting tonight about the academic day, the expectations and the support, those are the same kind of things that we will have ready for the modified in-person. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the modified in-person, and I'm going to turn it over now to Arlinda, and she will share with you how we intend to navigate modified in-person when we make that phased approach.
Thank you, Holly. If we can go to the next slide, please. All right. So when we're ready, and it's safe, and like Holly said, or Mrs. Williams said, we don't know when that will be. We don't have a crystal ball, but when the time is right and we move into modified in-person, then students will come onto our campuses, and if they normally take a bus to school, we will provide that transportation for them, and bus routes will be created so that students can come onto our campuses. We could go to the next slide, please. So when students are on our campuses, they'll follow the regular daily schedule that they would follow given the day of the week that they're there. But in addition to that, we're going to have some enhanced safety protocols within the classroom and around the building and around the school. An example would be reusable face shields and face masks to all student-focused employees. So if you're an employee that's going to have a lot of contact with students, then we as a district will provide you with that reusable face shield and face mask. And all other employees that will be on campus but won't have that constant contact with students, we will also provide face masks, and they will be the reusable face masks. And in the classroom, we will have available for use by staff and our custodial staff, and also by students, because we've learned that the cleaning supplies that we use are safe for the older students to handle. So we'll have gloves available, we'll have spray cleaners, paper towels to wipe down desks. And a lot of times when I look at social media, I see a lot of stuff about teachers having to buy their own hand sanitizer. As a district, we're going to provide hand sanitizer for every classroom. We'll have refillable bottles for every classroom. We'll have them around campus, and then we'll have the gallon-sized hand sanitizer that then the bottles can be refilled. So teachers do not have to buy their own hand sanitizer. We will be limiting the number of visitors on campus, but if a visitor has to come for the safety of for a student safety or a requirement for some reason, we will have disposable masks for our visitors. And if a student doesn't have a mask and needs a mask, we'll have one for them. And any other staff as needed, we as a district will provide disposable masks. In the classroom, we will provide student desk partitions as needed. They're plexiglass standalone partitions that can be used. And in our health offices, because they'll be seeing students with all kinds of needs, we will also have additional PPE for all of our health offices. So you might be asking yourself, well, what does all of this look like once students come on campus? And we do have a set schedule for that. So the next slide will have Mrs. Mesa share with you what the schedule would look like. Mrs. Mesa?
Thank you, Arlinda. President Minor, members of the board, thank you so much. So as we talk about modified in-person and being in a safe place to transition to this point, we want to talk about what does that actually look like. And so in a modified in-person model, it would be part of our students would be participating in person, and the other portion of the students would be accessing their learning remotely. So this actually would allow for physical distancing by reducing the numbers of students that are on campus at one time. And so an example of that would be that on a campus, leaders would create two separate schedules, an A schedule and a B schedule. And so within an A schedule, a student might would attend on Monday, Thursday on one week, and then a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday on the next week. And the similar schedule would be for the students attending Schedule B, would be the alternate of the A. So they would attend Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, when the students in the A model are attending Monday, Thursday, and then on the alternate week, they would attend Tuesday, Friday. So in a nutshell, that means that a student in an A group would come 2 days on one week, and they would alternate the Wednesday. So it would be 2 days one week, 3 days the next week, 2 days one week, 3 days the next week, with B being the opposite. We are going to be working with leaders to make sure that this looks like and is friendly for families. And what that means is if I have 3 students that attend a specific school, I might be worried about 2 of my students being in an A model and 1 of my students being in a B model. And we're going to work with families to make sure that that doesn't happen, so that all of your students are attending on one specific schedule. So all of your students would attend either an A model or a B at the same time, making it easier for families to access this model. Also within this model, we've really discussed the safety procedures in order to execute in a safe way. And so according to the guidelines that Mrs. Williams spoke about earlier that we're following with Maricopa County and the CDC guidelines and the roadmap to success, specifically ensuring that students are in a safe place. So with half of the students, we would be able to physically distance 6 feet or more, which is the guideline. Also making sure that students are facing in the same direction, so that all of their desks are facing the same direction is one guideline in order to ensure that students are safe. And that when it is not possible to maintain 6 feet or more, then students would be wearing their face coverings. So for example, in an elementary that might look like if there's a transition where I wouldn't be able to maintain 6 feet apart between my students, then we would be looking for face coverings. Or maybe in the junior high or high school during passing periods, might not be easy to keep students 6 feet away, 6 feet apart. So during those times, students would be asked to wear face coverings in order to maintain safety. And then regarding breakfast and lunch, specifically in the elementary, breakfast and lunch would be had in the classroom, where breakfast would be delivered to the classroom, and then lunch, students would go to the cafeteria, pick up their lunches, and then return to the classroom to eat, so that they would be able to maintain physical distance while they're enjoying their lunch. In junior high and high school, where it says right here, the cafeteria based on the ability to follow physical distancing. So we would be working with leaders at junior high and high school to ensure that the students could have access to the cafeteria, but again, ensuring that physical distancing is possible while they're in there enjoying their lunches. If that would not be something that could be arranged or managed, then the default would be eating back in the classroom. So those would be details that the school leaders would work out as far as physical distancing. So we can go on to the next slide.
Thank you, Monica. This is Tracy Eastless again. I will be really quick because basically these are the same sets of expectations that you saw in an earlier presentation during the remote learning model. They're modified just a bit for the modified plan. The students, instead of being 100% working from home in remote learning on that schedule that Mrs. Mesa just spoke about, with those safety guidelines in place, when the students are in person in class, they would just simply follow in-person lessons that their teachers are providing. And then when they go and are on those opposite days where they're at home, they continue with the asynchronous kinds of learning, again through the Canvas platform and the curriculum and the lessons that teachers are assigning when they're at home. So again, same document, same big buckets, and the expectations from those audiences. Mrs. Vaca, do you have anything to add here?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, next slide.
So the next slide is again frequently asked questions, and both Mrs. Mesa and Dr. Islas hit on these. And again, I'm sharing with you just a couple of frequently asked questions. Please know that we have on the website tomorrow, there will be a link to frequently asked questions with many other questions that families have asked us and we have provided answers for. So who determines which day? They will be based on last name, and we will work with families to make sure that students are scheduled for the same days as Mrs. Mesa shared. And what happens on the days when my student doesn't attend school, that's those opportunities for that asynchronous learning that Dr. Islas has been talking about, where teachers will make assignments in Canvas that students can access and work at a self-paced rate on those days when they are not in the physical classroom. Could you go on to the next slide, please, Cody? This is that same chart you saw earlier, but without the in-person grayed out, because this would be our hope after we have successfully transitioned, phased into modified in-person, that once the health of Arizona and the guidelines have loosened, that we would be able to resume in-person learning for all of our students. When that happens, again, we will do a 2-week transition. We'll give parents choice. At that time, the modified in-person will go away, and the choice will be, are parents and students going to stay in remote learning, or would they like to transition to the 5-day-a-week in-person? I wish I, again, don't have a crystal ball to tell you what that date would be, but I will tell you that we will take time to make sure that there's a transition, that it's well communicated, and that it's planned for, and that families are well aware of when that's happening. But if you would transition to the next slide, please. In-person is what we all are hoping happens sooner rather than later, knowing that we want to get there as safely as possible for our students. And when we say in-person, that means 5 days a week with a teacher back fully functioning as a school would be, with some additional safety precautions in place. And so our goal is to do that through a phased approach and to be very thoughtful about making sure that all the safety procedures in place and that we're doing a good job keeping our staff, our students, and our families safe in this environment. So the next slide has a couple of frequently asked questions around that. One of them being, when will this begin? I wish I could tell you. We don't have a date, and we're not suggesting a date tonight. We are suggesting that we will do it in a very safe, organized manner that's well communicated so that families know what to expect. And then the other question being, can I keep my student in remote or modified when in-person learning begins? When we move to in-person, modified will go away, so the option will be to stay in remote. Modified in-person will no longer be an option. If we feel it's safe enough to open, we will open for 5 days a week, and our schools will have options for 5 days or for remote learning. And we will give parents the opportunity to make that choice for their children. We will also give teachers a choice in that if they have circumstances. We will be talking with our leaders tomorrow more about how those kind of decisions will be made down the line for staff members who have significant health concerns and they would like to stay in the remote learning environment also. So we will have options for that. Cody, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. And would you mind linking on that first bullet for me, the bringing staff back to work? This is a document that's been created through our health and safety design team, and it's a personal safety guide for employees. It's, I believe it's 15 pages long, and I'm going to give Helen a chance just to talk about the highlights here, if you would, Helen.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that opportunity. The health and safety team has spent much time working on all of the facets of health and safety, and this has been a nice culmination of our work to be able to provide this to our employees so that they have a guidebook to help them through the decision making. So we won't go through all 15 pages. Cody, if you would scroll down, there is a table of contents, and I'd like to just help the board understand and our community who are participating in the meeting this evening understand the types of things that we have in place to keep our, particularly our employees, safe when they are working with us. For example, daily health attestation. It was important to our community in the survey we conducted in late May. It was also important to our staff that we address the idea of a daily health attestation. So in this particular booklet, we talk about the employee one, and there's numerous ways that we will be ensuring that our staff understands what healthy is and are assessing themselves. So for example, they will be doing an at-home health assessment before they even leave for work. If they pass that at-home health assessment, as they come into the office, we will have signage posted at all of our entry points that remind everybody what are the symptoms that they have to be free of to be able to kind of cross the threshold into a school environment. And our employees will be instructed that by opening the door and crossing that threshold, you are again attesting that you are healthy and able to come to work for us. We are also looking to institute a daily app that our employees will be able to log into and actually record that assessment so that we know not only did they do the home health assessment, but it gives us an opportunity to have that data available to us if we need it. The Health and Safety Subcommittee on Training did a phenomenal job putting together a training course for all employees that they will be taking here in the near future. We will be hopefully hosting it through GROW beginning on Monday. It is approximately an hour long, and it really dives into not only their personal safety in the environment of a COVID-19 pandemic, but also how we can keep others safe. We have physical distancing rules. We have PPE rules, including face coverings and gloves. We have quite a bit of information about facilities, everything from how we expect our employees to use bathroom facilities to how we will manage congestion and visitors in our lobbies, front offices, and other communal areas, to the recommendation that we began with last week, and we will continue to have, has highly recommended that appointments are used to control the flow of visitors to a campus. We know that many times in-person is the only way that we can truly help someone through an enrollment question or perhaps an issue that they're having. So we want to make sure that that in-person service is provided as safely as possible through our appointment setting process. We have, similar to how we have talked about the physical configuration of students in a classroom. As you know, we have many workspaces where it is a communal type workspace with multiple desks, hubbies, we call them cubicles, and we want to make sure that the supervisor, along with the team of individuals that work in that environment, are ensuring that the configuration is such that employees are not sitting face to face, they have the 6-foot social distance or distancing that they need, and perhaps additional barriers put in to provide a more contained environment for them. We also have rules about conference rooms, supply rooms, break rooms, visiting other sites in our district. One of the things that we know in working through the summer, particularly with our food and nutrition folks, was how safe they felt when they worked with individuals that they knew. And when a new individual was introduced into that environment, it gave them pause because they didn't have a sense of confidence on how that person had been self-protecting against the pandemic. So we know that every time an additional individual comes onto a campus, it causes that pause for people. So one, as employees, we want to control our travel between campuses, and two, as visitors, we will be hoping to provide that service as close to the front entrance as possible so that we don't have a large number of individuals going throughout a campus, across through buildings, etc. In addition to all of that information to help our staffs come back successfully and safely, there's some addendums about the health aspects of COVID-19, including quite a bit of research through CDC and then reference to the COVID-19 reporting system that Mrs. Williams and her team has in place. So our goal is to launch this document tomorrow with our leadership teams and then get it out to all of our employees shortly thereafter.
Thank you, Mrs. Hollins. I appreciate that. It's a very thorough document, and our employees are going to find a lot of the questions, answers to the questions that they have around safety and buildings in this document. So we're excited to share that tomorrow with our team. I've touched already on the teacher assignment and choice of models. I wanted to add a comment when I talk about that also. You know, there's concern about sharing of supplies, and we are making plans for leveraging our community partnerships to help us with the idea around sharing supplies and helping support students in any ways we can. So we are working through some of those challenges and making sure that we have exactly what students need as school begins in our modified in-person option. And then Mrs. Hollins mentioned our COVID-19. We have a COVID-19 reporting team that includes members from my team and members from HR with Dr. Driscoll's guidance, and we and Nadine, our Director of Health Services, Nadine Miller, and we meet weekly to discuss making sure that we're following best protocols when it is gathering the information around COVID reporting. We are keeping the appropriate database and sharing with the employees the most up-to-date information about their rights and the leave that is provided by the federal government and all things COVID. So we have a Mrs. Dorsch, my assistant, is who mans that phone and email site and takes those reports and makes sure the appropriate communication and documentation is being captured so that our human resources team can use that to apply the leave and the appropriate accommodations for the employees. We use the Maricopa County Department of Health as our guidance and keep that information updated as that information changes on that website. And they've, as I said earlier in the presentation, they've been instrumental in providing guidance for us in this area. Okay, you've heard our back to school opening of school plan. We are proud of the work. I am work with the dedicated individuals that have served on this team to bring this to you tonight. And Dr. Forlis, I'm going to turn it over to you for any last words, and we can start with some questions.
Well, good evening again, Madam President, members of the board. Our community has asked for details. We have provided details and more details. And I know that it feels a bit overwhelming right now as we're trying to make sense of what does this look like in the day in the life of a child, a teacher, and a parent, and community members around how do we support this. I could not be more proud of the work that has been done. Oftentimes in education, we live in silos and we build systems within silos. This pandemic, as I had promised early on, is going to help us kick down barriers and create more opportunities for more kids. I really believe that the collaborative nature of our leaders, our teachers that have come to this table to say, let's design what school is going to look like as we open up school, has done a remarkable job. And I'm going to take the words of Mr. Peterson and just say, I am in awe. I am in awe of the work that has been done with care and compassion and concern with students at the center so that our kids are ready for the future that they deserve. So with that, I'd like to open it up for more questions.
Before, and I've already asked plenty of questions, but before we get into the questions, let's lay out what next hour or 45 minutes will look like, because we are now at 9:26 and we have been in on this subject alone since I believe it was 7 o'clock, around 7 o'clock. So nearly 2.5 hours, and it is getting late and there probably are a lot of questions. One of the things we could do at this point, and I'm not saying we're not going to be able to ask questions, that wouldn't be fair, but you said there's going to be the frequently asked questions where there's going to be multiple questions and answers that we can access, read, and bring back more questions if we feel like there's more, which I'm sure there will be, because this is a moving I would say we are developing it as we're flying the plane, because things change daily, weekly. And so we are always going to have questions, and logistics are going to change. So I don't think tonight would be the end of questions. And so I would say that we could ask the most significant questions that are most pressing to us tonight, and then hopefully be able to have the patience and understanding to look at those FAQs and answers, and then give time. We have, from what I last heard, about 70 comments or questions that have come through while we've been having this presentation, and we feel that we need to cover some of those categories that have been asked through those individuals, and still be able to go to bed tonight and get up early in the morning and start all over again. So with that, I'm hoping that the board will keep that in mind, and that our audience that are watching us, if you're still there watching us, I'm sure most of you are, because you're all interested in this topic, would be patient and understand that there will be more time for questions, more opportunities. And we certainly understand why there would be many right now, because this is a huge shift in the way things have been done before and ever have been done. So clearly there's a lot of logistical issues here, and a lot of questions for specific needs for every family and employee. So with that, I'm going to ask the board to think of the most pressing questions at this time, and give us an opportunity to open it up to those who have sat through the meeting and are waiting to have their question asked, who are watching.
President Minor, I have a question that basically is, it has two parts. When I see the transition between the different opportunities, remote to modified in-person to in-person, I would like to also say that I am in awe of the amount of detail that has been provided here. This is amazing. But my question is the transition. Having been a teacher and a parent in the Mesa Public Schools, I know that kids thrive on routine. They thrive on a schedule. Teachers thrive on a schedule. Parents get into the groove of the learning of the new school year by watching their kids get into a schedule, into a routine, get into a rhythm. And sometimes that can take at least first quarter. What I'm concerned about is, would transitions be that a 2-week smooth transition, or would they be disruptions? And that's what I'm worried about, that a transition could become a disruption, particularly with a lack of communication. And what I've heard our staff so eloquently say is communication is going to happen. But what I'm also hearing in the community is that particularly for our folks that are not proficient in English, this communication has not always been good. So what I'm asking is, can we have transitions that maybe are a little bit longer than 2 weeks? Can we assess things and let people know way ahead of time so that transitions don't become disruptions? And can we make our communications accessible to people that are not proficient in English?
Mrs. Hutchinson, I'm going to jump in. This is Holly. Absolutely, we can be flexible with those transitions. We felt that 2 weeks was a minimum time that we would need to make the transition, but by no means are we saying that that's the absolute. It's what we feel we would need to do it successfully, And the part about communication that's different in our plan moving forward is our family support teams, our family support network, utilizing those team members to help us reach those families who maybe in the past have been disconnected. We will be reaching out to them using those connections that we make throughout this time in remote to make sure that the communication is clear and that they receive it in a timely manner so that they can make those transitions and have those schedules and that predictability and that comfort in a schedule like you talked about. That's important to us too.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. That's very reassuring to me, because if we don't have clear communications with all of our families, this will become disruption and it will become chaos. And so the emphasis on communication, and I love the idea of the family support teams and various other ways that school communities have figured out how to engage all of their families. One size does not fit all. So it's really great that we're going to have site-based support systems in these various building sites. So thanks very much for thinking about that and how we make these transitions easy for our families and our teachers who are planning these units, as well as our parents who want to support them.
I too would like to kind of have a question and a comment. I did see one of the last slides emphasize what we're saying, returning back to school in person to a learning environment when it's safe. So hence with the when, the date and actually the anxiety around the date is something that I know we're saying right now we can't predict. But what's out there regarding a date, the August 17th, I believe is causing a lot of anxiety when it comes to our teachers specifically, and we have also other classified members. So when they're saying, okay, we're gonna have this transition, and now we've kind of explained the details of how all those things are going to happen, we haven't demystified the August 17th date. So with the pending of thinking, okay, 10%, 5%, CDC recommendations is at 5%, that's a better and a safer environment to have the consideration of changing the environment. I guess my question is, how do we start helping demystify that? Because I mean, we all are getting the emails. We understand what's going on, and we know that's the only date that's out there. But we're saying when it's safe, and basically all around us, we have counterpart school districts saying, okay, we're going to go until we're going to come back after Memorial Day. We'll come back after October. We'll assess in October what the rest of the school year is looking like. I think at this point, what would give some peace or some ease the conscience of a lot of our teachers, staff, people in the system is demystifying that August 17th, because that's right now a focal point that I'm sure over 1,500 people that's on the line, that's what's in their mind. So I don't want to kind of just, because I appreciate everything I saw. It's awesome. It's amazing. You have all of these different things, but I'm sure we have half of those viewers out there, just all they're thinking, flashing the 17th in their mind and being at risk and everything it means and all of that. So that's this point, the thing that is pressing to me, what it means to say returning to school when it's deemed safe.
Mrs. Sears, I'd like to take that question. We have been very intentional in our language, and our language is saying that we have intentionally not included a date because we don't believe that a date provides safety. I don't know of any safe date that has been done correctly in this entire pandemic. So August 17th, and this is a step towards demystification. Mesa Public Schools does not have any plans to return to in-person learning on August 17th. We do not know that August 17th is a date that is safe for our children or for our staff. So when we think back about who will make that decision, because that's another part of the question around demystification. Let's think back within the last 3 years, we have closed school twice. We closed for Red for Ed, and we closed for this pandemic. It was not made, those decisions were made based on catastrophic situations where we could not open our schools safely in Red for Ed to be able to care for our children because of the number of staff that were absent. So we've had to work through that. Then we move into this pandemic. We are now paying attention to public health officials to make decisions. Governor Ducey came out saying that he is not going to make decisions playing to the press or to politics, but looking to public health. We have to take that leap of faith that he's going to do the right thing to make those decisions. So when we say when it is safe, we are looking to the public health officials to guide these decisions. Our governor closed school on March 16th based on public health information. He provided an executive order that we could not open school until August 17th based on public health information. And superintendents have been invited to meet with the governor at 2 o'clock tomorrow to have a conversation about just this. We predict, we don't have an agenda, but we predict it'll be about dates. Mesa Public Schools will be very strong in saying we are not going to open schools in person until it is safe to do so. So we are not going to hang our hat on a date because that creates, as you said, Mrs. Sears, much anxiety in our staff and in our community. And we also know there's the other side of that coin. There's anxiety of not knowing. And so if you're a planner like I am and you want to get things organized and planned, we're going to continue our commitment to err on the side of safety of our students and staff. So we don't have a date called safe yet. I hope that helps.
Yes, definitely appreciate that, and very much speaking to the point that Board Member Hutchinson was talking about, having consistency, teachers planning. We have many plans in there, especially when we're starting going remotely, and then we've basically seen how things, because October very well might not be a safe time to look on. So for as plans that's out there, we have first quarter and we have full semesters in terms of from here to here and having the assessment bench point. So I know I proposed this to you in private, and then I'm coming here saying October, looking at an October area for assessment in terms of consistency, very much like Board Member Hutchinson saying, okay, so we have remote learning. We know thus far, based on everything that we see, August 17th doesn't look, like you've just said, that's not a safe time to open schools. So with the going forward, are we gonna, assessments, are we gonna look at doing an assessment in October to see what the rest of the school year looks like?
And again, Mrs. Sears and members of the board, our teams have had long conversations around when are the appropriate times to check in with our communities around how we are continuing to monitor. But those monitoring, what we monitor and the dates that we monitor will be based on public health data, not on a whim on a calendar. It's got to be based on hard facts and information. And so we also we are well prepared to assess, and we just don't have a date yet.
Okay, one last question about public health data, and then I think this summarizes the things that I've heard. I'm concerned about when you say public health data. Are we going to be looking at the percentages and of that 5%, 10%, 20%, or the recommendations from our CDC representative here in Arizona. There's two different schools of thought that's going on with both of them.
Another excellent question, Mrs. Sears. So when we're saying that we're taking a look at the public health data, we're taking a look at the recommendations of the public health professionals. We are proud to be educators. We do have a director of health services that has been a huge contributor to this plan, and not only within Mesa Public Schools, but has also served on the statewide committee of opening schools. So we have our healthcare experts within our school district, but certainly we're not epidemiologists. And so we are going to continue to rely on those, the Maricopa County Health Department, as well as the Center for Disease Control that comes out and provides guidance to schools. I think that we're seeing that these conversations are ramping up across the country. And again, I am predicting a conversation with our governor tomorrow. We'll have some type of an outcome. And please know that for all 3,000 of you watching, as well as for our governing board and our leadership team here, that we have many people on our leadership team that are very influential and are making sure that Mesa Public Schools' voice is heard loudly and shouting from the rooftops. So rest assured, we're using those relationships.
Are there any other questions from the board? Mr. Peterson, you've made a comment. Do you have any questions?
I stand in awe.
I really commend you. I too stand in awe, not just for all of the details and all of the work that's gone on, but this is a group that has had to take into consideration many voices from our employees, from our community, from our children, our students, and those voices aren't in unison. They all are saying something that is very personal to their situation. And their situations vary. What is important to them varies. So this group has to navigate through all of the demands that they feel from those they serve as they look at the logistics. And I commend you because these are times when, unfortunately, there is probably a little bit too much judgment and criticism when people are working hard to try to do the right things. What I'm really encouraging is that people have patience, understanding, some faith. I believe personally in faith, and that to believe that we are all working to do what is best for all who are concerned. And so what I stand in awe of is that you're doing this very difficult job. And I don't think there's anyone else out there who would like to step in and take all of this on, especially as a brand new superintendent, and would relish the idea of doing it. So for me, I feel like that takes some element of courage. But what I have experienced, Dr. Forless, in talking to you, is you still take joy in what you are doing because you love what you are doing and you love the people you are doing it for. And I think that is the same kind of love that we all need to have for what we are doing, even in the most difficult of circumstances. We need to work together. We need to be supportive of one another, even when we differ in what our points of views are. In this time of very uncertainty and insecurities, we need to come together more than divide. So I congratulate you on all of you coming together, bonding through this experience, and coming up with some flexible options that can help everyone feel just a little bit more comfortable and feel like somebody is looking out for me. So thank you. And with that, I am going to ask Helen if she will take all of those comments and questions and put them in categories. And it is now 9:47. And let's see if we can get through these not too long past 10 o'clock. And again, we will continue this conversation. It is not over. It won't be over until we feel people are settled. And so next board meeting, we can continue and answer more questions. But we can start tonight with these and honor the people that have been waiting for the end of the meeting to hear some of their questions. So Helen, if you will begin, and thank you for doing that for us while we've been in the meeting.
I will. Thank you, Mrs. Miner. I will try my best. I'm going to let the audience know that as I free read these, I will probably abbreviate them a little bit. So if there's some personal comments, I'll take those out to make it go quicker. I usually also read the name of the individual the question was provided. I think I'll leave that out as well if you're okay, so that we can get through these as quickly as possible. Would you like me to pause after any questions for a possible answer, or would you prefer I just read a running summary of what we have before us tonight?
You know, Mrs. Hollins, I think I'm going to leave it to you to use your best judgment because I don't know what this looks like yet. And again, time is a critical piece at this hour of the night. If there is a point in time that Dr. Forlis feels like she really feels like she needs to answer that tonight or defer to somewhere where they could get that answer, then we can jump in at any time. But let's just play it by ear and do the best we can so we can get as much out there tonight as we can. Does that help at all?
I think that's great. And so I will focus on, first I will focus on ones that have questions in them. Okay. What are the plans for Kinder U? I don't know if you want Mrs. Baca or Mrs. Isla or Dr. Islas to touch on those.
And I guess I would have a clarification, Mrs. Hollins. Is it Kinder U or preschool?
The specific question says, what are the plans for Kinder U?
Okay, and so I was wondering if that was our inclusive or our special ed, self-contained special ed preschools. So I'm gonna, Tracy, Dr. Islas and Mrs. Baca, are preschool questions addressed within the frequently asked questions?
Well, this is Tracy Islas. I think some of the expectations will be part of, that's pre-K through 12. All of the learning models include expectations for all the audiences in a pre-K through 12 setting. I'm unclear as to what that specific question is referring to, but pre-K or preschool will be following the same model as K through 12. So if we're in remote learning, they'll be accessing through Canvas. They'll be using their own creative curriculum that they've used in the past, and we'll be sharing resources with families as well.
Thank you. Abbreviated comment, reopening schools puts every individual in the community at risk from the extreme danger and heightened responsibility teachers will face to the stressful choices and precautions parents have to make. Another abbreviated comment, I kindly request that when the governor allows schools to reopen, Mesa Public Schools allows elementary schools to reopen for both distance learning and in-person. Let parents decide if they want their child to go. Another abbreviated comment. As of now, we see no reason to not plan on opening elementary schools on August 17th with social distancing principles implemented that do not infringe on social interaction and outside playtime. Considering the rise of cases in COVID-19, it would seem ill-advised to send children back to school in such a short time. As you can see, we have a variety of opinions. Concerns about the special needs, it's specific with special need children in the online platform. That came, I think Mrs. Baca did excellent job explaining what they will be doing. Will there be choir, and how will you do it safely as it is a super spreader? Did the Mesa High students get together to sing the national anthem, even though you're remote? I can answer the second question. That was a recorded performance from earlier this year, pre-pandemic. Dr. Islas, can you address choir in a remote environment, or actually more as an in-person environment? In a remote environment, the music staff is working to provide lessons, and we'll also have some of that synchronous learning via WebEx to provide practices and learning as they would. When we get to the modified in-person, we will have to follow all of the safety guidelines and protocols for what that looks like. Thank you. Mrs. Baca, a question about meeting IEP needs and students who need to have their services provided. Anything additional you would like to add about IEP meetings, et cetera?
No, just that they will be on time as required to meet the annual updates or reevals. So nothing new. Thank you.
Mrs. Williams, can you please advise how the crisis plan will handle when a student or staff is diagnosed with COVID? How many students will be impacted, sent home? What would shut down a classroom or a campus? Perhaps some of an overview of that decision making.
Thank you, Mrs. Hollins. Currently, the practice as outlined by the Maricopa County Department of Health is that if a student or a staff member is diagnosed with COVID, that they self-quarantine for 14 days after the symptoms onset, and that they have 72 hours before they come back of no symptoms or reduced symptoms, no fever, with no medicine. And as far as making decisions about closing classrooms, as far as exposure goes, Maricopa County Department of Health is developing guidelines for that. Those are yet to be developed, but they are coming as we transition into in-person. They will have those in place. What the current practice is if you have been exposed, you can choose to self-quarantine or you can monitor your symptoms. And if you keep physical distancing and wearing face coverings, you can remain in the class as long as you are without symptoms. So we will be adjusting that as the guidance is updated from Maricopa County Health. They are developing the school guidance as we speak.
Thank you. Some additional plans about how we will support honors classes, AP classes. I believe this would also be similar to like IB classes in a remote environment. Dr. Islas? That's correct. Those same teachers who would normally teach those courses in an in-person setting will be teaching those remotely via Canvas, and their teacher-created materials aligned to those particular College Board requirements or programming curriculum. Thank you. Just so our community who's watching knows, if I run across a question that has already been answered, I just reached another one about contact tracing and quarantining, and I will skip those so we can honor the time as much as possible. I think this is an important one for Mrs. Baca. With the planned school year beginning on August 4th with virtual learning, is a student who had difficulty, in particular a student with ADHD and a 504 in place, are they excused from attendance and submitting assignments until in-person learning resumes?
No, we would not want to excuse them. We would want to meet as a full team and understand what strategies or supports we can put in place so that the student can access learning in a remote setting.
Thank you. What are the plans to address the emotional and physical needs of special education students, especially those who cannot learn effectively using technology?
I'm sorry, Helen, could you repeat that? I didn't hear the first part.
No problem. What are the plans to address the emotional and physical needs of special education students, especially those who cannot using technology?
So the most important thing is for the team to convene, which of course is the parent and school-based team. And we, from our department, the directors and myself are willing to participate to identify
students can access learning and be successful. We have a whole team of people who focus on behavior, who can contribute and help us problem solve through barriers. I know it's not easy, and these are the stories I'm hearing from our families, but it is going, we do need to get together as a team and really use all of our resources and creativity to develop a plan so that every student can be successful.
Thank you. Are children 6 and under going to be mandated to wear masks in class for learning? I'll address that, and then Mrs. Williams, if you would like to add anything. If they are successfully able to maintain a appropriate physical distancing, there will be opportunities for students to not have masks on during learning, but during transitions and times when they cannot maintain physical distancing, masks will be required. Mr. Sanders, can you explain why we are on a WebEx-based video conferencing platform and not Zoom?
So yes, so WebEx is part of our phone system currently right now, and that's what the license that we have to currently use WebEx. Zoom requires additional fees in order to use it from an enterprise level, and it's pretty pricey.
Thank you. Mr. Driscoll, how is the district going to protect employees, especially ones that are immunocompromised when returning face-to-face in school?
Can you repeat that for me, Helen?
How is the district going to protect its employees, especially ones that are immunocompromised when returning to face-to-face school?
Just like if we weren't face-to-face, the employee could apply for ADA accommodations, and we would look at that on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Dr. Islas, will standardized state testing be waived for the upcoming year?
That information will come from our State Board of Education, and we are still waiting to hear some decisions regarding that. And we will inform families and teachers and students as soon as we know.
Thank you. I think this one was answered. It was about not having devices by the first day of school. Will teacher training for Florida Virtual require a certain number of hours? I think that's Dr. Islas again.
Every elementary site has identified a trainer who will be attending training next week for 3 hours. That trainer, in coordination with their site leader, will provide training during our back to school days, which is a 3-hour training.
Follow up to that, using Florida Virtual, will teachers have a prescribed curriculum that students will progress through, and will teachers actually teach lessons, excuse me, or just be available to instructions?
Yes, the training will provide strategies for both the self-paced portion of the curriculum, as well as how teachers can provide extra supports through live instruction, whether that's remotely and synchronously or in person. It'll be a blended model.
Thank you. Parental concern that their child only had 2 of the 6 teachers in the spring actually reach out and present work to the child to complete. How are we going to be addressing that when school reopens? Dr. Islas, I think that would be under your expectations.
Yeah, that'll be part of the teacher and leader expectations, and we would expect that our teachers are connecting with all of our students throughout the week. Our leaders are working with their staffs to coordinate those schedules and ensure that we are connecting and engaging our students.
Thank you. This is from a teacher who both she and her husband work, and will Mesa Public Schools be providing full-time child care for staff children? I can answer that we will be providing an employee discount if they choose to participate in the Explore Enrichment Centers that Todd Wallace discussed earlier this evening. Another Kinder U question. Sounds like we probably need some FAQs folks to be able to put out specifically for our preschool model. This one is about a date, transition date. Dr. Wallace handled that. Lots of questions about, with two working parents, how are elementary students going to manage their remote learning? Of course, the enrichment centers would be one opportunity that would be possible for. Those are open, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we will have adults there who will assist students with remote learning during that work time. Question about device delivery. We answered that. It's about employees who have health concerns, working parents again. Are materials being sent proactively to avoid the major delay that was encountered with mailing materials at the end of last year? And Mrs. Mann, I know you have brought this up in conversations. Do you want to address the need or availability for print materials?
Yes, Mrs. Hollins. We are going to use technology as much as possible. If we encounter a situation where a family needs to have printed material, we would handle those by case, and they would work directly with the school. And it might be a situation where we mail it, or a situation where the family can come to school and pick it up. But that would be case by case when we can't go remote with the technology.
Thank you. Another concern of parents just being able to manage the heavy lift. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing, but the heavy lift of having multiple children at home, needing assistance with their learning and their technology, and concern about the parents being successful and being able to do that. How are students who may be at risk being assessed? This one in particular is asking about evaluation for speech. Teresa, could you address how families can ensure that their children can be assessed for services?
So we have continued evaluations throughout the summer of students, and that for any special education services, if it's being a student who needs speech therapy. So we are continuing those evaluations and then moving forward with creating an individual plan for students to receive services.
I had a difficult time hearing that. Did anybody else pick up on Mrs. Baca's comments and could repeat them perhaps?
No, I think we can put that one to the side and make sure that's in our frequently asked question.
Excellent. What will the student-teacher ratio be for remote learning?
Dr. Driscoll, do you want to talk about class size ratios?
Yes. So depending on the grade level, they'll be different. At our elementary, currently in our elementary, the class size student to teacher ratio is 24:1. That's district-wide. That's the district-wide average is 24:1 for K-6. That varies in different schools, but district-wide is 24-1. At the secondary level, 7th through 12th, it's normally 30-1. Our district average junior high is 28-1 and 29-1 at the high school.
I think it's important, thank you, Dr. Driscoll, and I think it's important to know that there is no recommendation to change any of those ratios in a remote environment, because it is our hope that that class stays together and then can come back in person. So there's no change.
Thank you. Will aides retain their jobs if they are unable to provide direct support to students during online learning? Friends, we hope so.
Dr. Driscoll, you want to take that one?
Yes, if the IAs can provide meaningful work, and we ask for flexibility, it might be in a different capacity, but if they can do meaningful work, yes, they would maintain their jobs. If they can't, in terms of pay, but if they're on contract or have a job, they will have a job when we ever start back. But if they want to be in the classroom, it might be something different. So the key is that it has to be meaningful work, because we have a law for gift of public funds, so we can't pay them for not doing work. They would have to be doing meaningful work, but yes.
Thank you.
Helen, Helen.
We have the same problem with all the H's.
Yes. I want to do a time check-in. We are now 10:06, and we need to probably close it down. But with those questions, are we going to, I guess I'm asking the questions, are we going to be looking through those and looking to the FAQs to include some that are quite consistent, there's a theme there, and then possibly email some of the others back on those other answers?
So yeah, we will certainly take all of these and incorporate them into FAQs where we don't already have them all embedded within the plan, or in an existing FAQ. We do have names for individuals, so if it's a very specific question for their family or their child, we will reach out to those individuals and be able to answer their questions. I highly encourage everyone who submitted a question this evening, particularly if it was about the plan itself, to take a look at the website when it goes live tomorrow. Hopefully we have anticipated your questions. Hopefully we have anticipated what we believe was top of mind and of greatest concern to our families and have incorporated that. If we haven't, this list is going to help us understand where we may have fallen short, and we will be shoring it up. Please know that the employee document that we showed you earlier this evening and the plan as a website that we will be unveiling tomorrow are both living documents, and it's so important that we designed them to be living documents, that they can continually be updated for accuracy and for additional information as it becomes available to us. So check back and check back often would be a phrase that I would want everybody to remember as they start thinking about the plan and its impact on their family, whether you're an employee of the district, a parent in the district, or even a community member that wants to understand how we're handling this.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. And I want to let everyone know who has been watching this evening and who had questions and waited to hear our comments and answers to those questions, that we appreciate your participation this evening. And we don't take it lightly that we were not able to get through it because of the time limitations, and that we plan on honoring your time by getting back with you in some form or fashion so that those questions don't go unanswered. I believe that as we go through this process once again, we're going to be able to answer more and more questions. And as we go, we'll still have more and more questions come up, but we will continue to keep answering. I'm sure administration, I'm speaking for you, but I'm sure that is your objective too. So thank you for all of those who hung in there with us this evening. And I hope this item on our agenda was helpful to you and helped in some way answered some questions rather than created more, but I have a feeling it also created more because I know it will. Anyway, with that, do we have any other comments before we close about closing tonight? Because that's what we need to do. So I am going to go ahead and Dr. Forlis, unless you have any other comments.
My last comment, I just want to say thank you again. Thank you to this board for your support. Thank you for understanding the complex decisions that are being made. I know that you have taken a lot of questions and you're fielding a lot of information. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your thoughts with us along the way. We commit to being better together. So thank you very, very much for your support. Thank you.
All right, with that, I am going to call for a motion for adjournment.
Oh, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second, somebody second.
Marcy Hutchinson, second.
Thank you. Now for the vote, Mr. Peterson,
Aye.
Mrs. Sears,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mrs. Richardson,
Aye.
and Mrs. Minor, aye. With that, that's a unanimous vote to adjourn tonight. It is now 10:13. Everyone have a great night, sleep well, and we'll see you in the morning. And thank you everyone again.